I woke up to a woman shouting my name. My head ached so badly I could barely open my eyes. When I did, I saw a woman and a girl crying beside me. One looked exhausted but graceful. My mother, Grace. The other, a teenage girl with black hair and green eyes, Hannah. I felt weak, my body trembling. They were relieved I was awake. I told them I was fine, though my voice barely came out. Grace stopped the carriage to cook, and Hannah ran to help. The moment they left, silence filled the air. Then it hit me. Back on Earth, I was a 26-year-old mechanical engineer. I'd just gotten a raise, then a car crash ended everything. Now I'm in the body of a 15-year-old boy named Ethan Cho, the illegitimate son of King Huan of the Arcadia Kingdom. His mother, Grace, had been a palace maid the king forced himself on. When she became pregnant, he hid her away and treated her like shame. His wives hated her, and his royal children bullied me for existing. A month ago, the king rewarded me with a territory called Baymar, a frozen, starving wasteland cut off from the empire. In truth, it was exile. As the carriage rolled through the cold road, I realized the truth. He wanted me gone. Then, a metallic voice echoed in my head. Host selected. System analyzing, 100% complete. I froze. Was that a system? Like in those novels? My heart pounded. Maybe this world wasn't hopeless after all. A voice echoed inside my head. Cold, mechanical, emotionless. Ding. Do you wish to bind with system? Without thinking, I said, bind. Binding of technological system completed. Host must bring advanced technology and development into this world. I froze. A system? In my mind? Still dazed, I asked, why me? When Host was on Earth, Host's IQ was 260. Among all deceased humans, Host was the smartest available candidate. I blinked. Smartest dead person? There are smarter individuals still alive. Due to Host's fortunate death, Host qualified. I almost laughed. Fortunate death? For who exactly? System will now explain basic functions. It continued before I could reply. Host will receive missions based on the condition of his territory. Completion provides rewards. System also offers a shop for basic equipment, purchasable with experience, technology, or bonus points. Experience from improving the land. Technology points from inventions. Bonus points from original ideas. Simple enough. A translucent screen appeared in front of me. Host. Name. Ethan Cho age. 15 status. Banished Prince of Arcadia. New Lord of Baymar level. Beginner condition. Weak, poisoned by Nolat Wisp. If exposed to wind for too long, Host may collapse. I sighed. Poisoned? Seriously? Maybe the king, maybe one of my half-siblings. Either way, someone wanted me dead. Before I could dwell on it, a small gift box appeared on the screen. System Starter Pack. Reward. Knowledge. Introduction to Farming. Bonus. Cure for poison. Physical strength improved. I tapped the icon. A sharp pulse of energy surged through me. Knowledge flooded my mind. Soil, crops, irrigation, everything. My body grew stronger. The weakness faded. I looked at my hands. The color had returned, flesh warming with life again. Another message appeared. Mission 1. Is your land really barren? Use farming knowledge to fix the food shortage in Baymar. Reward. Knowledge of gunpowder and cannon making. 100 development points. Submission. Map your territory for future use. No time limit. Just progress. Then came the second mission. Mission 2. Advance to level 2. Collect 2,000 experience points and 10,000 technology points. Reward. Unlock level 2. I nodded to myself. Makes sense. Can't have a strong kingdom without food first. Curious, I asked. System, Tell me about this world. The world is called Hertphilia. It has 9 continents. The host currently lives on Pino, which holds 5 empires: Arcadia, Corona, De Ferris, Tariq, and Yoden. Baymar is the 3rd largest city in Arcadia. 3rd largest? I frowned. Then why is it treated like trash? Baymar covers 6,000 square kilometers. Current population, 1,582. Food shortage severe. Winters deadly, most. Citizens survive on fishing. So that was the truth. Barely 1,000 people starving in the cold. It wasn't a kingdom. It was an abandoned graveyard. At least now I knew where to start. The carriage creaked beneath me as it rolled over uneven ground. Its wood was cracked. Its paint long faded. A noble's disgrace. My father hadn't even sent me off with a proper escort. What a stingy man. I sighed and leaned back. Well, at least I have the system. Just then, Hannah climbed into the carriage. She froze when she saw me, blinking in surprise. Brother Ethan, you look normal again, she said softly, smiling. Do you want to eat inside or outside? Outside, I said, standing up. The air was cold, but I felt stronger now. I stepped out of the carriage and followed her toward the firelight, ready to begin my first mission, to bring life back to Baymar. 10 groups sat on the ground, each circle gathered around small piles of food. As I walked past, every man dropped to one knee. Greetings, Your Highness, I told them to sit. No need for formalities. They smiled with relief and went back to eating. I followed Hannah toward my mother and sat beside Grace. She immediately turned me left and right, checking my face, my eyes, my temperature. Hannah grabbed my wrist, feeling for a pulse. Inside, I sighed. I'm supposed to be a king, not a toddler. Grace finally spoke. Ethan, you look better, but we'll find a physician in Baymar. Eat more first. Before I could stop her, she piled food onto my plate. Then Hannah joined in. Within seconds, the plate looked like a mountain. Are you trying to kill me with kindness? Grace even lifted a spoon and blew on it. It's not hot now. Hurry and eat. I glanced around. The soldiers were hiding laughter. One nearly turned purple, holding it in. Great. My first royal meal, and I'm being spoon-fed. Still, warmth spread through me. Back on Earth, I'd grown up alone. Here, I had a mother who fussed and a girl who cared. It felt good. Hannah smiled when our eyes met. My chest tightened for a moment. She had always protected the old Ethan, and I silently promised I'd protect her this time. Even as I shoveled food into my mouth, another thought crossed my mind. Do I look like a baby pig to these women? 3 soldiers could share this plate. I finished every bite anyway. Better to die full than ungrateful. While we ate, I looked over the camp. 10 groups, about 330 knights in total, barely enough to guard a village. My brothers each commanded thousands. Even my sisters had more knights than I did. The men assigned to me were the Empire's rejects, too slow, too poor, or too troublesome. Yet watching them laugh quietly around their fires, I saw honesty in their faces. Maybe that was better than polished cruelty. 5 men stood out among them. Lucius, the knight commander who'd shocked the capital by resigning to follow me. He'd been like a father since my childhood, though I suspected his real reason for leaving was my mother. Maybe I should play matchmaker. Mom deserves happiness, too. Next to him sat Josh, Mark, and Gary, his 3 captains, loyal and skilled. And near my carriage, Trey Parsi kept watch, eyes scanning the horizon. He was only 19, but already a knight lieutenant, my personal guard and best friend. To him, I wasn't just a prince, I was family. In the Empire, knighthood ranked from squire to provost. Most of my men were pages or lieutenants, yet their loyalty felt stronger than any title. When everyone finished eating, Lucius gave the signal. The camp packed up, and we mounted the carriages again. The road ahead stretched toward a gray horizon where the sea met snow. Our destination, Baymar, the land the king called worthless, the place I would rebuild from nothing. As we neared the city, I couldn't help but stare. Baymar stretched wide under the pale winter sky, almost as large as the capital itself. For a land everyone called barren, it looked full of potential. Maybe my father never even came. Here, I thought. He probably heard rumors and wrote it off. Foolish. Massive stone walls surrounded the city, towering nearly 16 meters high. Only one gate stood open for entry, guarded by weary men in rusted armor. It looked like something straight out of a medieval movie. As our carriages rolled through, people stopped to watch. Whispers followed us like wind. Is that the new lord? Do you think he'll help us? They say he isn't favored in the empire. Their eyes carried both hope and fear. The streets were lined with cracked stone and worn stalls. The people were thin, their clothes patched, their hands rough. Fishing and hunting keep them alive, I realized. Barely. To fix this city, I'd need money, and a lot of it. Thankfully, Grace and I had saved for years. She'd lived frugally since I was born, anticipating exile. I'd started saving my allowance the moment I could. Royal princes received gold. Commoners worked for copper. Where my half-brothers earned 300 gold a month, I got 50, and gave it all to her. We lived simply, so the coins piled. Up now that savings would have to feed hundreds. I calculated quickly, 6 months of survival maybe. After that, we'd need income, and fast. When we reached the castle, servants rushed out to greet us. They bowed low, their voices trembling. "Good day, Your Highness," I smiled. "Be at ease. I'm Ethan Cho, your new lord. This is my mother Grace and our household. Let's see our new home together." The castle was old but strong, its walls cracked, yet still proud. Inside, the staff gathered nervously. 30 people in total, most barely adults. "How many of you work here?" I asked. A girl stepped forward. 30, my lord. 12 gardeners, 4 stable boys, 3 cooks, and 11 maids." "Good." Nathan, Daniela, step forward. The couple bowed. They'd served my mother for years. Their son Gary was one of my knights. "Nathan will train the boys. Daniela, you'll train the girls. Everyone will be paid at the end of the month, 350 copper coins each. Use it well." The hall went silent. Then murmurs spread. Shock, disbelief, and then joy. Most of them had families barely surviving. I'd offered 100 more than the average wage. They bowed deeply. "Thank you, my lord." When they left, I turned to my knights. "You've followed me through everything. This is our home now. The Empire sent us away to die." Their expressions hardened. Anger simmered behind their eyes. "They think we'll starve out here," I said. "They think we're weak, trash, forgotten." The room filled with tension. But they're wrong. We'll build something greater than they ever imagined. The knights straightened, fire rising in their chests. "Are you with me?" A roar shook the hall. "Yeah," I said. "Are you with me?" "Yes, Your Highness," I grinned. "Good. Then listen carefully. From now on, you'll be paid for strength, not rank. Pages earn 1,000 copper coins. Squires, 2,000. Lieutenants, 3,500. Captains, 6,000. Majors, 9,000. Commanders, 12,000. Master commanders, 15,000. And provosts, 18,000. Gasps echoed around the hall. The salaries were insane, far beyond the Empire's standards. "This is a new era," I said. "A new city, and a new king," every voice shouted back as one. "Long live the king! Long live the king!" Their cheers filled the castle. For the first time, Baymar didn't feel like exile. It felt like the beginning of a kingdom. Morning mist rolled over the courtyard. The knights knelt before me in 3 uneven rows, hundreds of men, shivering but proud. I wasn't looking at warriors yet. I was looking at clay waiting to be shaped. Back on Earth, I'd served 2 years in the Army before becoming an engineer. I knew what training could do, how it built confidence, unity, and strength that no title could fake. This world had knights who swung swords but never learned discipline. That would change. I stood tall and let my gaze sweep over them. "Tomorrow before dawn," I said. "All knights assemble at the inner castle." The air froze. Every breath turned white. Anyone late, no breakfast or lunch. 3 absences, no food for a day, plus punishment. Understood? Their voices thundered back as one. "Yes, my king." The echo rolled across the camp like drums. For a moment, I almost smiled. I told them to divide into 3 groups of 100. Lucius nodded, already understanding. Josh, Mark, and Gary each stepped forward and saluted. Their men roared their titles in unison, "Captain," and pride lit their faces like fire against frost. While they organized, I walked toward my mother and Hannah near the wagons. Grace's hands were dusted with flour, Hannah's cheeks pink from the cold. "Mom, we'll need food for everyone, knights, workers, us," I said. She counted softly, thinking. 3 wagons wheat, 1 beans, 1 peas, 1 mixed grains, 1 seeds. I nodded. "Perfect. Tomorrow, please have the kitchen prepare breakfast for all units by sunrise." I kept my voice gentle. She wasn't a soldier. She was my mother. Grace smiled, warmth melting the chill. "My little boy has grown up. Of course we will." She reached up and pinched my cheek before I could stop her. Hannah laughed quietly. Beside her, face turning red. "Brother Ethan, you look kind of cool when you give orders," she murmured. Grace giggled. I sighed inside. Great. My grand military moment ruined by cheek pinching. Still, I couldn't be angry. I was surrounded by people who cared. When I turned back, the soldiers had formed 3 solid ranks. Lucius stood beside me, arms crossed. I raised my voice. "Each captain commands his unit. All captains report to Commander Lucius." They saluted in perfect rhythm. As I looked across the rows of worn armor and scarred faces, a strange feeling tightened in my chest. They weren't elite knights or noble sons. They were outcasts, too slow, too poor, too unrefined for the capital. Yet here, they belonged. And under me, they would become something more. "You'll treat each other as brothers," I said. "No, one left behind. You eat together, train together, fight together, and rebuild this kingdom together." The camp fell silent. I saw men swallow hard, eyes shining. In this empire, weakness meant death. For the first time, someone had told them they mattered. Lucius stepped forward, his voice deep. "My king, we should inspect the land next, to know how to defend Baymar." I nodded. "Exactly. We'll see it with our own eyes." As I moved toward the carriages, Lucius grinned faintly. "Little Ethan, do your cheeks still hurt?" I froze, realizing the men had heard. Their laughter rippled across the cold air. I groaned, but couldn't help smiling. Maybe this was what leadership felt like: strength, warmth, and a little humiliation all mixed together. We left the castle with cold air in our lungs. I opened the system the moment the gates closed behind us. "How do I map the territory?" Golden text answered, precise and calm. "Look at the empire map and highlight your regions." "Just like that?" "Yes, and if I expand later." "Highlight more regions. Alerts trigger on threats or intrusions. Simple, dangerous, perfect." I drew a circle around Baymar on the map. I left space between walls and fields for patrol roads. A prompt appeared like a breath on glass. "View selected territory on the monitor?" Yes. A window unfolded in my mind like a flat screen. Coastline, fishermen hauling nets, farm plots scratched into frozen soil, hunters crossing the gates, stone walls, tired towers, and a wind-scarred castle. Baymar moved beneath my eyes, alive and vulnerable. We rode through the upper region first. Estates stood like silent giants, 6 stone mansions each, with small outbuildings, 16 estates in all, wrapped by waist-high fences. You could see everything from the road. Grand, but abandoned. No nobles remained to sneer or scheme. When Arcadia cut us loose, they fled to the capital. Serving a powerless prince was suicide in their world. Loyalty was a costume they shed at the first storm. We entered the central region where the villagers lived. We greeted people, lent hands, kept moving. The homes were fragile. Timber frames, woven twigs, mud walls, straw roofs. One blizzard could flatten a street. The roads were worse. Potholes, mud, and standing water. Baymar had the Empire's highest winter deaths. Now I knew why. Past the market lane, we saw daily life unfold. Men with bows searched the outskirts for meat. Women carried water in cold-bitten hands. Children ran, laughing through breath that smoked. They waved when our banner passed and then looked away. Hope was a habit they had forgotten. The land softened into the lower region, open fields and fallow ground. I counted hundreds of plots and barely 5 farmers. Even the soil looked abandoned. People believed the ground itself had given up. West of the fields, 2 vast private estates sprawled across the snow. East, a 3rd estate sat alone like a watchful eye. Their walls were heavier than the ones up north. Thicker gates, newer stone. Why here? Strange, I said to Lucius. Why build out here? Indeed, my king, he answered, scanning the horizon. A shy voice rose from the ranks behind us. Maybe they found something valuable in the lower region. The speaker trembled like a sapling in wind. Blonde hair, dark eyes, armor too big for his frame. What's your name, age, rank, and captain? I asked. Billy Vane, 17, squire under Captain Mark, my king. Good thinking, Billy, I said, and meant it. His face lit like a lantern in snow. Confidence is a spark. Sometimes, that's enough. We paused on a rise and looked back at Baymar. Upper region, empty wealth and echoing halls. Central region, brave families and fragile roofs. Lower region, fields that needed hands and secrets in the west. The system's map hovered beside the view, lines glowing gold. Borders mean little without people to hold them. Units maintain formation, I called. Captains note road, repairs, housing reinforcements, and field counts. Lucius rode up, eyes narrowed against the wind. We should inspect the estates to the west first. I agree, I said. If there's value, we'll find it. The men shifted, saddles, creaking like old doors. Snow hissed under hooves. I closed the monitor and kept the map open. 3 regions. One future we head west. We reached the first estate just before noon. A hill, a gate, and chaos frozen in place. The courtyard looked shredded. Broken tools lay everywhere. A left boot floated in the pond like a warning. Grain trailed from the yard into the manor as if someone fled mid-meal. I spotted a torn painting in the flower beds, a woman's undergarment near the grain, and a half-eaten fish gone cold. Were they that afraid of my father's wrath? Nothing added up. Ash covered another yard like gray snow. Blood stained a few. Discarded swords. We searched every mansion and found nothing worth keeping. Then I saw it. A dark mouth cut into the hill behind the estate. A cave. Hands went to hilts. We entered carefully. The walls glittered with unfamiliar veins. The system whispered names I recognized from Earth. Molybdenum, trona, feldspar. Here, they only valued molybdenite for tougher blades. The rest? Pretty rocks for rich walls. On Earth, trona became glass, paper, detergents, textiles, half a civilization's backbone. Feldspar, fed kilns, and ceramics. I felt the future tug at my sleeve. The cave was vast, easy to get lost and die foolishly. We marked our path and backed out. The second estate rose on a twin hill 700 meters away. This one was cleaner, almost staged. Kitchens held sacks of wheat and seed. Armories were stacked, mail, blades, spare straps, another yard of ash and dried blood. Another cave, iron, the system said. The air tasted like wet coins, an entire iron mine, quietly sleeping under someone's lawn. How did no one report this? We didn't linger. The third estate waited across the fields. Smaller walls, tighter layout, same pattern, seeds, armor, ash, and a cave. Pigments lined the stone like an artist's palette. Red ochre, yellow ochre, umber. Then the system pinged again, saltpeter and limestone. My breath caught. Gunpowder, fertilizer, lime for soil, mortar, and future roads. Cosmetics, paints, fireworks, threads that could weave an economy from frost. I stared up at white crystalline cones clinging to the ceiling. They looked like winter frozen mid-drip. For a heartbeat, I was a kid again, grinning at treasure. Reality returned just as fast. Ore doesn't turn into industry by wishing. Extraction, refining, safety, supply lines. On Earth, we had columns. Pipes, tanks, acids. Here we had shovels and hope. I rubbed my temples and listed what we lacked. Even cosmetics needed a dozen inputs I didn't own yet. Still, slate was everywhere. Chalkboards for training. That, at least, I could build tomorrow. When we emerged, the men were buzzing. "What do you think?" I asked. Gary spoke first. "No reports mention 3 mines. Barons or the city lord must have known." Josh shook his head. "They'd need workers. Did they use villagers?" Lucius's voice cut cleanly. "If they told anyone, they'd be dead. They hid this to keep it from the Emperor." Mark glanced west. "And now they can't confess. Years of silence is treason." The line went quiet. We all knew what my father did to liars. "If King Huan knew he handed a fortune to Ethan Cho," Josh said, "he'd kill them." "Which means he didn't know," a younger knight muttered. Nods passed down the ranks like a wave. I looked back at the 3 hills. Abandoned mansions, ash-stained courtyards, caves full of futures no one here could name. Baymar wasn't poor. It was undiscovered. I opened the system and tagged each mine on the map. Alerts armed, patrol routes sketched. We'd keep them quiet until we could protect them. "Form up," I called. "We secure the hills, then the roads. No rumors, no leaks." Lucius met my eyes and gave a single, satisfied nod. We turned our horses toward the path. 3 estates, watched from the snow like teeth in a smile. For the first time since exile, I felt it, the shape of a kingdom under my hands. Not someday. Soon. We argued the ash before we left the hills. Trey said the quiet part aloud. They silenced their own workers. Lucius agreed. No villagers here, and the mines were distant. Gary reminded us the gates sit in the central region. No reason for honest people to wander this far west. I hated the logic because it fit too well. We turned south toward the sea. Baymar's map sat open in my head, lines glowing gold. The central region felt like a compass point, roads branching in 4 directions. North held the gate, south breathed salt and wind. At the coast, life returned to the world. Villagers hauled nets and baskets heavy with fish. We spoke briefly, offered help, then moved on to the walls. Stone rose clean and formidable against the sky. For once, something here was built to last. We pushed into the trees beyond the gate. A shout cut the quiet, high and desperate. Steel rang against thick hide. We found a child facing a charging boar, red hair, bright, stubborn eyes. A Sword too big for his hands. He squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for pain. He never felt it. Lucius moved like thunder. Trey finished the strike. The boar collapsed at the boy's feet. He thanked us between breaths. I asked his name. Mo Lee, he said, voice shaking. Who are you? I told him I was the new lord of Baymar. Fear flashed, then confusion, then relief. I asked why he was alone. He told me about winter, sickness, and an empty house. Only his sister remained, and she needed meat to live. Something in me unlatched. I know what empty feels like. I told him the truth of my decision. From today, you are my little brother. Your sister is my family too. You both will live in the castle. His eyes filled before he could speak. Sometimes salvation is a sentence, not a sermon. We carried the boar and followed him home. The house was barely a room with a door. Coughs answered before we knocked. Inside, his sister lay on straw, frail, red-haired, and trying to sit. She looked like a spark that refused to die. Mo called her by name. Sister, the Lord is here. I stepped in with Lucius and Josh. She bowed her head, then swayed. I asked her to sit. I promised warmth, medicine, and food. Please call me Ethan, I added. Family doesn't need titles. Her shoulders eased. Josh stared, then forgot to breathe. She noticed and blushed. He looked away, equally doomed. Captain Josh, I said, smiling. Help Era pack. Lucius and I gathered what little the house still protected. Mo hugged his sister, laughing through tears. Outside, the air tasted cleaner. We lifted their bundle and the boar together. The men teased Mo until he smiled for real. I marked the forest trail on the map and closed the window. We walked back toward the road as the light thinned. Baymar's coast murmured behind us. The say, walls watched like patient giants. I looked at my people. Old scars, new hopes, and 2 more hearts to protect. The Empire played with lives like coins. I would not. We turned toward the castle. Tonight they eat. Tomorrow we begin again.
We reached the castle before dark and shared the news. My mother and Hana welcomed Mo and Ara like family. We placed their rooms near ours for comfort and safety. Mo grinned, Ara tried not to sway on her feet. I assigned Mo to Josh as a page. 8 is early, but courage needs direction. I set my gear aside and lay on the mattress. Tomorrow, training at dawn. Then the farms. Then the soil. Sleep took me like falling through snow. Morning hit cold and sharp. I stood in the inner courtyard by first light. 300 men faced me in neat ranks. No one late. Even Mo arrived early, eyes bright and nervous. I let discipline do the talking. Lines of 10, I ordered. I counted aloud. 1, 2, 3, 7, 52. They settled fast, breath fogging the air. Too slow, I said, voice flat. Next time, 5 counts. Miss it, 10 laps. They tensed. They understood. During drills, I'm not your king. I'm your commander. When I ask, you answer, sir, yes sir. Say it. Sir, yes sir. The courtyard roared. Stone carried the words like drums. 4 disciplines, I continued, steady and cold. 1, I am the law here. 2, obey my orders. 3, obey without condition. 4, in my absence, obey Commander Lucius. Understood? Sir, yes sir. We warmed up for 10 minutes straight. Arms burned, lungs clawed. I watched their rhythm settle, then cut the rest. Form behind your captains. They moved like they had something to prove. Josh took the left. Mark the center. Gary the right. Mo planted himself behind Josh, jaw set. Lucius studied everything with a veteran's calm. I could feel his approval like a nod. You are weaker than you think, I said. Not in will, in stamina. We fixed that first. They braced. I kept my face unreadable. Squat wide. Hands locked behind your back. Confused looks flashed, then vanished. They dropped as one. Holding the squat, jump forward to move. 10 laps around the courtyard. Mo does 4. For a heartbeat, they looked relieved. Then the fire hit their thighs. Breath turned ragged, steps broke rhythm. Pride met gravity and learned honesty fast. From the rear line, I matched their pace. I wanted them to hear me breathing too. Real soldiers don't fold, I called. Stand it up. This is an order. Someone muttered, demon trainer, and kept going. Good. Let the name stick. Gary's legs shook, but he refused to slow. Lucius joined the set, jaw clenched and calm. Mo finished his fourth lap and hugged a post, beaming. The men cheered him between gasps. We reset the ranks while hearts still hammered. Captains, I said. You carry your men. If someone fails, you failed first. They answered together. Sir, yes sir. I looked across faces red from effort. This wasn't punishment. It was a promise. No one left behind. We closed with stretches and breath control. I called water and a 2-minute stand down. Frost steamed off cloaks in thin ghosts. They stared at me like I was born in armor. Truth, I was just a man who had learned to endure. The system had healed my body, yes. But discipline built the rest. I outlined tomorrow's cycle: warm-ups, jumps, runs, core. Sword drills would resume after strength returned. Roadwork at dusk. No injuries from pride. I dismissed the units to captains for cooldown. Mo jogged to Josh, saluting with both hands. Josh ruffled his hair and hid a smile. Lucius stepped beside me, eyes bright. Effective, he said simply. Necessary, I answered. As the men filed out, I felt the shift. They had met the edge and chosen to stay. Not for a title. For each other. I turned toward the gate. Next, the farms and the soil. Strength feeds discipline. Discipline feeds harvest. Harvest feeds a kingdom. That's the order. By sunrise, the courtyard already shook with footsteps. We'd just finished the first set, and half the men were dead on the ground. Sweat streaked the frost. Breathing turned into growls. Even the strongest dropped like fallen leaves. They stared at me like I wasn't human. Maybe I wasn't anymore. I'd done every squat, every jump, every crawl beside them, yet I stood, steady and silent, while they collapsed in heaps. When their breathing steadied, I called out, "Line up." That single phrase could probably haunt them in their dreams. They scrambled so fast, it was almost comical. Even half-asleep soldiers suddenly became ninjas. Lucius smirked behind me. He knew I'd broken them just enough to rebuild them. We ran another 45 minutes of drills, sit-ups, duck walks, kicks, rotations. Movements they'd never seen before, all from Earth's military training. They gasped, grunted, and learned pain. Then came mercy. Rest. The air filled with groans and collapsing bodies. Before anyone could recover, a maid approached me quietly. Her words, soft and formal, "Breakfast is ready, my lord." "Form lines," I said again. Their faces twisted, but hunger won over pain. We marched to the dining hall, 12 long tables, 12 cauldrons steaming like a royal feast. My mother, Hannah, and Ara stood at the front with the maids, smiling. The hall looked like something straight out of Harry Potter, except everyone here looked like they'd fought a war. "You have 1 hour," I said flatly. That was all it took. Within minutes, the hall turned into a feeding frenzy. Plates clattered, laughter returned, and steam rose like victory banners. For a moment, the kingdom felt alive. I joined my mother, Hannah, and Ara at the royal table. Momo sat beside me, eyes half closed but glowing with pride. The women took turns doting on him, pinching, hugging, and teasing. "Too hard, little one?" my mother asked. "You don't have to push yourself," Ara said gently. "When I'm strong, I'll feed you instead," she added with a smile. Hannah joined in, laughing, "Tell big sister when you need to rest." Momo puffed his chest out. "Auntie, big sister, I'm fine. Brother Ethan trained me well. I want to get strong." They melted instantly. "Ah, my cute little Momo." My mother cooed. Ara pinched his jaw, Hannah pinched his cheek. Even I almost laughed. He looked at me, betrayed. I could practically hear his thoughts. Cute? Adorable? I'm a warrior. When breakfast ended, I stood again. The sound of my boots was enough to silence the hall. "Line up and move out." Groans followed, but they obeyed. If there was a devil in Baymar, they'd decided it was me. Back in the courtyard, I laid down the next step. "In 2 weeks, your teams will compete," I said. "The strongest from each will become second in command." That got their attention. Even exhaustion couldn't hide their pride. "You'll train swordsmanship 3 times a day, after breakfast, after lunch, and before dinner." They straightened, almost forgetting the pain. Then I added the twist. "For today, we start sword training immediately. After that, Commander Lucius will assign duties: border watch, city patrols, internal guard. They nodded. Focused. I bent, picked up a sword, and smiled lightly. As of now, I said, I'm not your commander. Lucius is. I'm just another knight. The looks on their faces, priceless. Some wanted to laugh, others to cry. Demon 1 minute, angel the next. Lucius crossed his arms and glared at those who relaxed. Who said you could sit? He barked. Step forward, 100 push-ups. Now. The groans returned, louder this time. Captain Josh, he continued, train the page. Everyone else, draw blades. Their reply shook the walls. Sir, yes sir. I stood among them, sword in hand, and couldn't hide my grin. From one demon to another. Lucius fit the role perfectly. He met my gaze, eyes steady, lips hinting at a rare smile. For the first time, Baymar sounded like an army. And I finally felt like a commander worth following. By the time training ended, the sun was high. It was barely 9 a.m., and the courtyard smelled like steel and sweat. The knights went off to their assigned posts. I decided to take Trey, Hana, and little Momo to the farmlands. From above the hill, the lower plains looked vast, hundreds of brown patches stretching endlessly, cracked, empty, and tired. 3 farmers were bent over in the dirt. When they saw us coming, they froze. One of them hurried forward, bowing low. Good day, my lord, he said, voice trembling. I smiled to ease him. Good day. Tell me, what's wrong with your land? The oldest of them, a man with black hair streaked by age, stepped ahead. His hands looked carved by years of work. My lord. May we ask who you are? I'm Ethan Cho, new king of Baymar, I said. This is my knight Trey, my friend Hana, and I believe you know little Momo. Their eyes widened. A king walking the fields with farmers? It was something they'd never imagined. He cleared his throat. Your Majesty, my name is Pat. These are Leo and Walter. He gestured to the others, strong men with eyes dulled by disappointment. We've farmed this land for over 20 years. No matter what we plant, the crops die young. The soil gives us almost nothing. I crouched down and pressed my hand into the dirt. It felt dry, hungry, almost. But beneath that hunger, there was potential. I see, I said softly. Meet me here tomorrow morning. I'll give you your solution. They bowed again, but I saw disbelief in their eyes. And I couldn't blame them. Their fathers farmed this same ground. Generations had failed before them. Why would they believe a 15-year-old king? Still, they agreed to return. After they left, I poured water over the soil. It drained quickly, too quickly. Good. That meant air could flow. I squeezed a handful, it held shape for a second before falling apart. Even better. This land isn't dead, I murmured. It's just starving. I scooped up a few handfuls of topsoil, wrapped them in cloth, and brought them back to the castle. In my chambers, I filled a jade wine basin with water and poured the soil inside. I stirred it until every clump dissolved. Without glass, I had to make do with what I had. Maybe one day, I'd teach them to craft transparent jars, but for now, this would work. As the dirt settled in the basin by the window, I sat on the bed and whispered, System, give me the farming guide for my starter pack. Request denied, the metallic voice replied flatly. If the host wants a copy, he must write it himself, I sighed. You're supposed to be a mighty technology system. It is because the system is mighty that your request is rejected. The system is not a photocopying machine. I blinked. You're shameless. Accurate. I rubbed my temples. Then how can you help me? Host can use the space-time capsule. 1 hour in the real world equals 5 days inside the system. My eyes widened. That's perfect. Let's do that. Host lacks sufficient points. I groaned. Then why tell me? The system deemed it an appropriate time to inform host. Of course you did, I muttered. Still, curiosity won. What does 1 capsule cost? 10 technology points, 5 experience points, or 2 bonus points. And how do I get those? By inventing something of use. I froze, then smiled. An idea sparked. That's it. I'll make a blackboard. That night, the soil rested by the window, and I barely slept from excitement. The next morning, after drills, I checked the basin. The mixture had settled into clear layers. Sand at the bottom, silt in the middle, clay on top. Loamy soil. Perfect texture for crops. If the soil was right, then the problem wasn't composition, it was nutrition. I looked out over the frosted fields stretching past the castle walls. The answer was clear now. Baymar didn't have bad land. It had forgotten how to live. When I tested the soil that morning, I knew we had a problem. The water in the basin stayed clear, no color, no sediment, no life. Dead soil, I thought. It hasn't eaten in decades. Good soil should cloud the water, rich with organic matter. This one was starving. The cure was simple: feed it. Back on Earth, I'd call it manure. Here, no one even knew what that was. They'd been farming lifeless ground for 40 years and calling it cursed. Baymar wasn't the only one. Half this continent was starving its own land. They thought it happened overnight. It didn't. They just stopped giving back. So I explained it to my team: soil is alive, full of tiny organisms. Kill the life in it, and the crops die too. I decided to change that. We gathered buckets, sacks, and shovels. Hana, Momo, Terry, and 3 other knights followed me to the lower region. At the stables we shoveled manure into bags. From the wells we drew water. We gathered moss, dead bark, fruit scraps, and vegetable peels. Back on the field, I told them what to do. Mix everything and spread it evenly, I said. They hesitated. The smell alone was enough to make them gag. Their faces said he's lost it. But they obeyed. Water it, lightly, I added. Too much and the soil hardens. They followed every step. When we finished, I told them to repeat the process every few days and report back. They nodded, curious now rather than doubtful. While they cleaned up, I planned the next move. Farming would take time, and Baymar couldn't sit idle. If I wanted real progress, I needed minds as well as hands. So I decided to open a school. A place where everyone, kids, adults, even elders, could learn to read, count, and think. If the Empire wouldn't give us knowledge, we'd build our own. Grace and Hana would help teach. Grace would handle simple math, addition and subtraction. Hana would teach the imperial language, Piran. I'd take the advanced math myself. We'd start from zero. Numbers first, then equations. Evening lessons for the teachers, Grace and Hana learning side by side until they could run classes without me. I'd heard reports of a few literate villagers, an alchemist, a welder, a scribe. I'd find them. No one could rebuild a city alone. The plan was simple: morning classes for children under 18. Afternoon for adults. Everyone had to attend at least one session a day. We'd divide by age: below 7, below 13, and above 13. 3 classes at once. Then swap. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. If Baymar was ever going to stand again, its people needed knowledge. As I walked to the central district to find a carpenter for the blackboard, I felt a quiet thrill. The land was waking up beneath our feet. And soon, the people would too. I wasn't there to see it, but word travels faster than mercy. High above Whitewood City, the Crown Prince stared over his walls like they were already his. Eli Huan wore confidence like armor, but worry flickered behind his eyes. Jamin Park, his shadow with a sword, knelt and delivered one line that mattered: the poison was placed. Nalat Wisp. Slow. Quiet. 5 months to finish a life. No cure. No witnesses. No proof. Eli didn't even open the letter first. He asked if it was done. Jamin said yes. Eli smiled and called me trash. Then he planned Baymar as his hidden barracks, a place to raise soldiers off the books. No royal spies there. The king had abandoned us so completely that we were perfect for secrets. He aimed higher than me anyway. A year and a half to take the throne. If the king noticed, Eli would die. So Eli chose my land to grow an army he could deny. He laughed at the thought. Greed makes brave men stupid. Jamin hesitated once and asked why. Eli told him, because a dead brother can't interfere, and a forgotten city makes a perfect mask. A messenger's letter finally opened. Jin Na Huan wanted to visit. Eli guessed she was probing, not informed. He would reply, play nice, keep breathing. Far away in Draper City, 2 other princes whispered in a bright room that smelled like fear. Connor Huan questioned an assassin who got away, the rest had killed themselves. He dismissed the man and turned to his younger brother. They worried that if the king learned of their move, they'd be finished. So they chose courtesy over knives: send a letter to Eli, request a visit, act innocent. James would hide in Connor's territory for now. If Eli knew, he'd try to erase them together. No one trusted anyone. Brothers traded smiles like daggers. That's how empires rot, quietly, from the crown downward. While I mixed compost into dead soil, the palace heirs planned to bury each other. They thought Baymar was empty. They thought I'd be gone in 5 months. I kept working. I remembered their faces from another life. And I made a note: feed the land, then deal with the lions. The workshop was small, stone, and alive with noise. I stepped inside and watched a short man bend over his work, whiskers curled, apprentices focused behind him. He noticed me late, flustered, kind. Tim Myers owned the place. I told him I needed school supplies, not slates, but chalkboards. He frowned at the word, so I explained, one big board for the teacher, cleanable, reusable. Slates were fine for practice, but slate pencils screeched and ruined the surface. Chalk was quieter, kinder, and didn't destroy the board. I showed him the plan, materials, and finish. He relaxed as the design took shape. I ordered 60 chalkboards and 2,000 slates. We set prices, 7 copper per slate, 4 silver per chalkboard. Delivery in a month. Reasonable. Chalk and paint needed mineral ores, so I moved fast. Next day, I gathered 300 men and put Locke Wiggins in charge. Wages, 400 copper a month, Locke at 600. Lunch provided, 5 copper deducted, no one complained. We split the force. From the 300, 20 would make chalkboard paint, 80 would make chalk, the rest mined and hauled. I appointed 3 supervisors, Hale Verno for ore extraction, Charles Mopey for paint, Javon Stern for chalk. Each at 500 copper a month. We cleaned an old estate in the lower region and turned it into a plant, separate buildings by or type, daily deposits logged, guards posted, cooks hired. A week later, the stores were full. We mixed the first batch of paint and pressed our first sticks of chalk. I sent samples to Tim, finish smooth, lines bright, dust manageable. For now, chalk would be free to teachers and kids. When the economy stabilized, 12 sticks for 10 copper, a future price, not today's burden. Outside the plant, I kept thinking about the classrooms we were building in people's heads. 3 blackboards per room. Language with Hannah, basic math with Grace, advanced with me. Morning for youth, afternoon for adults. A city that learns is a city that survives. Time slid to the last week of the month. I was leaving the upper district when I saw Waldo running, breathless and smiling. My lord, the plants have borne fruit. I stopped. The first answer from the soil had finally arrived. The system's voice echoed faintly in my head. Congratulations to host for completing the first task. I didn't check the reward. I needed to see it with my own eyes. Waldo came running, face streaked from tears and dust. He fell to his knees, voice shaking. Your Highness. Your idea worked. The soil, it's alive again. We can feed everyone. I helped him up. Stand, Waldo. You're my people, my family. Feeding you isn't charity. It's duty. His eyes softened, and he smiled through the tears. When we reached the farmlands, the sight stopped me cold. Fields that once cracked and died were now bursting with color. Wheat swayed under the wind, peas climbed thick stalks, tomatoes glowed red. The land breathed again. Farmers saw me approaching and ran over, faces bright, hands dirty but proud. They no longer bowed out of fear, they greeted me like kin. Every week, I'd eaten with them, laughed with them. A king who shared meals, not orders. Leor stepped forward, eyes wide with disbelief. My king, your methods. It's like seeing farming for the first time, I laughed. Then let's keep learning together. But we'll need more hands. I told them my plan, 250 new workers, open to men and women alike. Children under 15 and elders over 38 would work lighter tasks, safety first. Leor would oversee everything. Pat would manage soil and planting. Waldo would track yield and storage. Leor got 600 copper coins a month, Pat 500, and Waldo 500. All other workers, 400 each, meals deducted at 5 coins a plate. When I finished, the field fell silent. They were stunned. Farmers across the empire earned barely 250. I was paying nearly double. Then the cheering started. It rolled through the crowd like thunder, laughter, tears, promises. They'd heard the miners boast about good food and fair wages, but seeing it was different. They called me kind. Some whispered divine. I didn't need worship. I needed progress. We walked together to the second estate, now the future of Baymar's food industry. I showed them each hall and storage room, assigning spaces by crop type. Grain here. Vegetables there. Fruits in the cooler wings. Everything logged and guarded. I told them about the coming stages, fishing divisions, preserved goods, canned food factories. They didn't understand the full picture, but they trusted me anyway. Soon, I said, Baymar will feed itself, and the world beyond it. Leor promised to gather 250 more workers within 3 days. I watched the sun fall over the revived fields, golden light sliding through wheat and rye. The wind smelled of new life. For the first time, Baymar's soil was alive, and so were its people. Back in my room, I finally opened the screen. System, show me my stats and rewards. Host, Ethan Cho age, 15 status, Lord of Baymar level, beginner, 1, condition, healthy completed, fix barren lands, map territory reward, knowledge, gunpowder and cannon making, plus 100 development points total, 100 DP a prompt blinked. Receive rewards, yes, no I accepted. 30 minutes of pure data hit me like a wave, formulas, mixtures, bore sizes, fuses. When the rush settled, a new mission unfolded across my vision. Mission, your walls can't protect your future. Build and test warfare cannons to defend Baymar. Rewards, full knowledge of cement manufacturing. 20 godly food recipes plus 5 spice recipes. Plus 250 DP and plus 1000 technology points. Deadline, none. Cannons and cooking? I frowned. I thought technology meant wheels, engines, factories. The system answered with silence, but the logic clicked anyway. If people fall in love with better food, they'll crave better tools. Pans, ovens, toasters, grills, time savers become necessities. Appetite turns into adoption. Adoption becomes industry. It wasn't brainwashing. It was market timing. Show them what life could taste like. Then they'll demand the tools. I pictured Baymar's kitchens today, boiling pots, slow roasts, a few timid fries. Salt was costly. Spices were guesswork, leaves, honey, whatever felt right. Pots were cauldrons with no handles, heavy and awkward. Ovens baked bread and bricks, too expensive for common homes. One thing they did well, pastries. Sweet crusts. Pies. Puddings. But everything else crawled like the 10th century. My late grandfather had sailed to Tariq once. He tasted fried meat and sent chefs to learn it. They came back 6 months later and taught the capital. The trend spread, but only in narrow lines. Most chefs copied, never tested. When they tried frying fish or vegetables, they used meat times and burned everything black. So they declared it impossible. People believe what survives the test, not the theory. Back on Earth, the same pattern ruled. Flat world until voyages proved curves. No heart transplants, until someone tried and lived. Evidence changes minds. Evidence feeds cities. The system's recipe list suddenly felt less random. Godly dishes first. Then the appliances. Let them chase flavor until they beg for speed. And it wasn't just taste. Cement meant roads, schools, mills, batteries of industry. Cannons meant deterrence while we built it all. Food would keep my people proud enough to stand in line and learn. I scrolled past my totals again. DP, 100. Guns soon. Cement unlocked after. Recipes and spices layered in between. I thought of the Empire's shared ovens, owned by neighborhoods. Bread for the many, heat for the few. In Baymar, I'd build electric ones, cheap to run, easy to use. Not for mansions. For streets. I laughed, then sighed. Pizza felt very far away. Still, I could see the steps, prove the soil can live. Prove the kitchen can change. Prove the walls can roar. People would follow results, not speeches. I closed the screen and lay back, letting the plan stack itself. Cannons for safety. Cement for structure. Kitchens for culture. Tomorrow, I told myself, we test the knights. Brains, then hands, then steel. And after drills, I'd start with spice. Hook the city by the tongue, then hand them tools to never go back. We stepped off before dawn, the air like ice in my lungs. 3 lines of men moved toward the lower hills, silent, balanced, deadly calm. 2 months ago they were loud and sloppy. Today their backs were straight, their breathing quiet, their steps light enough to pass for shadows. Even Momo, still a child, held formation with a new, steady focus. I drilled into them what this era ignored: camouflage beats pride. Knights here worship noise and honor, flashing steel to prove strength. War doesn't care about pride. War rewards the living. So we trained surprise. We trained to vanish. We trained to bring everyone home. I taught traps and pressure points, the fastest ways to stop a fight without drawing blood. If swords were forbidden, then brains and hands would win. They learned to strike the neck, unbalance the hips, and end a struggle before it started. 2 weeks earlier I'd chosen 3 mini hills far from fields and estates. Brush for cover. Sand pits to punish carelessness. Thin streams threading toward the sea. Each team got 1 hill and was told to build sheds, blinds, trip lines, decoys. They guessed the rest and prepared for war. We reached the mustering ground at 4 a.m. I faced 3 ranks, rows of 3, every man alert. They looked like soldiers I remembered from another world. 2 phases, I said, Voice low so it carried. Strategy and infiltration today. Swordsmanship tomorrow. Lucius and Nathan brought forward 3 crates and set them down. I opened the lids and let the colors speak for themselves. Inside are headbands, ropes, and flags, I told them. Josh's unit is red, Mark's unit yellow, Gary's unit purple. 50 ropes per team for taking prisoners. 5 flags to defend. Headbands could go anywhere, wrist, ankle, belt, calf. No one put them on their heads. Good. They were thinking. I laid out the objective in a single breath: bring me 1 enemy flag or 50 enemy headbands. I won't advise you on where to hide yours or how to hunt. Figure it out. They answered as one, the sound clean and solid. Sir, yes sir. Lucius and I will move between your camps, I added. If you can't see us, assume we can see you. Then the rules: simple, sharp, unavoidable. No blades. No clubs. No improvised weapons. Use only the holds and strikes you were taught. You may disarm and pin. You may not knock anyone unconscious. Hands settled on belts and thighs, checking headband ties again. Every strip of cloth suddenly felt as heavy as a metal. If your headband is taken, you're dead, I said. If it falls off, you're dead. The dead do not rejoin the battle. The dead do not whisper, signal, or help. Break this rule and you earn 1 month of punishment and a hold on promotion. A shiver ran the lines. Not fear, clarity. Time limit, 2 hours. At the horn, every man returns here. If any soldier is late, all teams take 1 week of extra drills. They understood the point. Brothers Keeper wasn't a slogan, it was survival. I looked across the 3 colors and saw what I needed: discipline, hunger, restraint. They were ready to be more than the Empire's cast-offs. Good luck, men, I said, raising my hand. I dropped it, and the exam began. We broke before sunrise, and the hills felt awake. My men moved like a single thought, quiet, controlled, ready to test everything we drilled. At Josh's camp, order clicked into place. I watched through the system overlay as he split the unit into 5 groups. 12 for perimeter scouts, 36 for infiltration, 20 for trap control, 16 for flag defense, 15 for base and VIP protection. He kept 1 flag on himself. Smart. He made Momo the headband vault. Smarter. His rules mirrored mine: watch first, strike only when needed. Hidden blinds were tucked under mud and grass. Scouts rotated in 3s, 1 runner, 1 shadow, 1 anchor at the post. Group 2 fanned toward both rivals, 18 toward Gary, 18 toward Mark. 6 cells each, every approach covered. Compromise meant immediate withdrawal, no heroics. Group 3 sat on traps, 3 men to a snare. Catch, strip, rope, and either escort or release dead men at the perimeter. Reset fast. Wait for the next shadow. Group 4 guarded 4 flags in squads of 4. Spread wide, blend with scrub, give no tells. The 5th flag rode with Josh. Group 5 guarded the heart, base, Momo, and the captain. If the vault fell, the color fell. Josh planned for that. Out on Gary's slope, the brush swallowed faces. Mud-coated skin, leaves masked hair, branches broke the line of shoulders. From the system view, they nearly vanished. It worked. Buried jacks waited behind a trunk, still as the bark. 4 enemies drifted inside the line, unaware. Barry moved first, signal, surge, clean execution. He struck the nerve pocket behind the jaw, parotid node, quick and sharp. The man's body folded, not broken, just ended for now. Headband off. Rope fast. Prisoner walked to the perimeter and cut loose. By the time his cell returned, I'd already marked Barry. Decisive on the call. Precise on the grab. Born for the quiet work that wins loud battles. Back near Red's Hill, Trey and his recon slid along the edge. They studied trunks for nests and branches for weight. No tree huts here, Josh had stayed ground-born. Carrie paused, eyes narrowed at a lump of dead grass. It lay wrong against the wind's direction. Too neat. Too still. What about that heap? He whispered to his team. They shrugged. Looks normal. It's a hole, he said. Men are inside, heads under the mat. They'll wait until we pass, then run the word to Josh. He didn't need my confirmation. He had the pattern. Shallow pits, camo mats, relay runners. My kind of student. I have a plan, Terry said, already measuring angles. I tracked 3 camps at once, flags hidden, ropes ready, traps breathing under leaves. This was the exam I wanted: brains over bravado, patience over noise. Honor lives in the men who come home. Today, they would prove they knew it. The horn sounded across the hills like the voice of God. 2 hours had passed in what felt like 20 minutes, and the battlefield turned silent. Men emerged from blinds, ditches, and brush lines, some limping, some grinning, most covered in mud and scratches they'd wear like medals. I stood at the muster point with Lucius, watching 3 colored waves converge. Red returned first, disciplined and intact. Josh led them in formation, Momo beside him clutching a pouch bulging with headbands. Yellow came next, Mark at the front with a grim smile and 2 flags tucked under his arm. Purple lagged by 30 seconds, Gary's face tight with frustration but his men still whole. I let them catch their breath before speaking. Captains, report. Josh stepped forward. Red team secured 2 enemy flags and 47 headbands. We lost 16 men. No injuries requiring medical attention. Mark saluted. Yellow team took 2 flags and 31 headbands. Lost 22 men. 3 minor sprains. Gary's voice came harder. Purple team captured 1 flag and 53 headbands. Lost 34 men. No serious injuries. I nodded slowly, letting the numbers settle. Josh's unit wins on strategy and execution, I said. Mark's unit wins on adaptability. Gary's unit wins on individual skill. Purple straightened slightly at that. But this wasn't about winning, I continued. It was about learning what happens when you stop thinking like knights and start thinking like soldiers. I walked the line, meeting eyes. Knights charge. Soldiers survive. Knights seek glory. Soldiers bring everyone home. The field went quiet. Tomorrow we test swordsmanship, I said. Same rules, no killing, no maiming. Victory through precision, not brutality. They answered as one. Sir, yes sir. Dismissed. Eat, rest, and tend your bruises. You've earned it. The camps erupted in exhausted celebration, men clapping shoulders, recounting close calls, laughing at mud-caked faces. I watched them and felt something settle in my chest. These weren't the Empire's rejects anymore. They were mine. That evening, I sat in my chambers with the window open to let in the cold. The city below hummed with life, smithies glowing orange, market stalls packing up, children racing home before dark. Baymar was changing. Slowly. Carefully. But undeniably. I opened the system interface, and the familiar golden screen materialized in front of me. Host, Ethan Cho. Age, 15. Status, Lord of Baymar. Level, Beginner, 1 condition, Healthy. Current points. Development points, DP, 100. Technology points, TP, 0. Experience points, XP, 0. Bonus points, BP, 0. I frowned at the zeros. System, how do I earn technology points? The metallic voice replied without emotion. Technology points are awarded for inventing or implementing technology absent in this world. Define inventing. Creating a functional prototype of a device, system, or process not currently in use on the continent of Pinot. I leaned back, thinking. On Earth, I designed hydraulic systems, gear assemblies, and stress-tested industrial equipment. Here, they barely had functional carts. The gap wasn't just wide, it was an ocean. System, what can I unlock with technology points? A new menu unfolded before me. Prototype lab, locked cost, 25 TP. Function, access advanced blueprints and simulations for inventions. Test designs virtually before building. Workshop enhancement, locked cost, 50 TP. Function, unlock access to precision tools and measurement devices. Mass production protocols, locked cost, 100 TP. Function, enable factory scale manufacturing systems. I whistled low. 25 points for a lab. 50 for better tools. 100 for factories. The path was clear: invent something simple, earn points, unlock better systems, invent faster. A classic tech tree progression. System, give me examples of inventions worth technology points. The screen flickered. Low tier inventions, 5 to 15 TP. Improved plow design. Hand crank grain grinder. Wheelbarrow with reinforced axle. Waterwheel mill. Simple pulleys. Mid-tier inventions, 20 to 40 TP. Printing press. Advanced metallurgy techniques. Irrigation systems. Glass manufacturing. High-tier inventions, 50 plus TP. Steam engines. Electrical generators. Chemical refinement processes. I studied the list. A waterwheel mill could grind grain faster than 50 men with mortars. A better plow could double farm output. A hand crank grinder could free up hours of labor daily. All of them were simple. All of them were revolutionary here. But before I could decide, a knock echoed at my door. Enter. Nathan stepped inside, bowing slightly. My lord, there's a delegation from the mining operations. They're requesting an audience. I stood. Send them in. 3 men entered, dusty, tired, but respectful. I recognized Locke Wiggins immediately, the foreman I'd appointed to oversee the mineral extraction. Beside him stood 2 younger workers, both holding their caps nervously. Good evening, my lord, Locke said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Good evening, Locke. What brings you here at this hour? He gestured to the men beside him. These are Gil and Farron. They work the ore transport routes between the mines and the processing estate. I nodded. I remember. You haul the raw materials for chalk and paint production. Yes, my lord. Locke hesitated, then continued. We've been having problems. What kind of problems? Gil stepped forward, twisting his cap. The carts, my lord. The axles keep snapping. I frowned. How often? 3 times this week alone, Farron added. We lose half a day's work every time one breaks. And replacing them costs silver we don't have. Locke's jaw tightened. We've tried reinforcing them with iron bands, but they still crack under the weight. The roads are rough, and the ore loads are heavy. We're losing efficiency and morale. I crossed my arms, thinking. Cart axles. A problem so mundane it would bore most nobles to tears. But here, in a city rebuilding from nothing, a broken axle wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a bottleneck strangling progress. Show me, I said. We walked through the lower district under torchlight, past sleeping homes and quiet workshops. The transport yard sat near the eastern estate, a wide dirt lot filled with wagons, carts, and piles of broken wood. Locke led me to a cart tipped on its side, its rear axle split clean down the middle. I crouched beside it, running my fingers along the fracture. The wood was dense but brittle, oak, probably. The brake followed the grain, a classic shear failure. How much weight were you carrying? I asked. About 400 kilograms, Gil said. Mostly iron ore. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. And how far do you travel per trip? 6 kilometers round trip. Twice a day. 12 kilometers daily, loaded with iron, over roads that were little more than frozen dirt paths. No wonder the axles were failing. System, I thought silently. Pull up data on axle stress tolerances and load distribution. The golden text appeared in my vision, invisible to everyone else. Axle failure analysis. Current design, single solid wood beam, 8 cm diameter. Load capacity, 300 kg sustained, 400 kg maximum before fracture risk. Primary failure points, grain shear under torsional stress, uneven load distribution. Recommended solutions. Increase axle diameter to 12 cm, reduces shear stress. Use composite construction, wood core plus metal reinforcement. Introduce bearing surfaces to reduce friction. Redesign will hub to distribute load more evenly. I nodded slowly. The solution wasn't just a stronger axle, it was a better system. Locke, how many carts do you operate? 15, my lord. But only 9 are functional right now. And how long does it take to build a replacement axle? 2 days, if the carpenter prioritizes it. I did the math in my head. 2 days downtime per failure. 3 failures a week. That was 6 days of lost productivity every week, nearly a full workday wasted daily. Unacceptable. I'm going to fix this, I said. Locke blinked. My lord? I'm going to design a new axle system. Stronger, more durable, and easier to repair. Give me 3 days. The 3 men exchanged glances, hope flickering in their eyes. You can do that, my lord? Farron asked. I smiled. I'm a mechanical engineer. This is what I do. Back in my chambers, I pulled out parchment, ink, and a straightedge. The room was silent except for the scratch of my quill and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. I started with the basics, force diagrams, load vectors, stress distribution. On Earth, I'd done this 1,000 times, designing shafts, axles, and drive systems for industrial machinery. Here, the principles were the same. Only the tools were different. Problem: wooden axles fail under sustained torsional and compressive stress. Solution: hybrid construction using wood and metal in a layered design. I sketched the first concept, a wooden core wrapped in an iron sleeve, with bronze bushings at the wheel hubs to reduce friction. No. Too expensive. Bronze was costly, and we didn't have enough smiths to mass produce them. I crumpled the parchment and started again. Second concept, laminated wood construction. Instead of a single solid beam, I'd use multiple thin layers of wood glued and pressed together, with the grain oriented in alternating directions. This would distribute stress more evenly and prevent catastrophic shear failures. Add iron bands at the stress points, near the hubs and at the center, and you'd have an axle that could handle twice the load at half the cost. Better. But still not perfect. I needed something easier to repair in the field. Third concept, modular axle with replaceable segments. I sketched a design where the axle was split into 3 sections, left, center, right, connected by interlocking iron sleeves. If one section cracked, you could replace just that piece instead of the entire axle. Faster repairs. Lower costs. Higher uptime. I sat back, studying the drawing. This could work. System, analyze this design. The golden text appeared. Design analysis, modular laminated axle. Estimated load capacity, 600 kg sustained, 800 kg maximum. Failure rate reduction, 75% compared to current design. Material cost, plus 30% per unit, offset by reduced replacement frequency. Repair time, reduced from 2 days to 4 hours. Technology points awarded upon prototype completion, 12 TP. I grinned. 12 points. Not bad for a cart axle. System, what if I add a secondary improvement, like a better wheel hub or a lubrication system? Additional improvements detected. Redesigned wheel hub with roller bearings, plus 8 TP. Grease reservoir system for friction reduction, plus 5 TP. Total potential TP, 25. 25 points. Exactly what I needed to unlock the prototype lab. I leaned forward, excitement building. This wasn't just about fixing carts. This was about proving that Baymar could innovate, that we didn't need the Empire's scraps to survive. We could build our own future. The next morning, I gathered Locke, Tim Myers the carpenter, and Hale Verno the blacksmith in the castle workshop. I spread the blueprints across the table. Gentlemen, I said, I'm about to change the way we build carts. Tim squinted at the drawings, tracing the lines with a calloused finger. Laminated wood. Interlocking sections. My lord, I've never seen anything like this. That's because no one's built it yet, I said. But it'll work. I guarantee it. Hale frowned at the iron sleeve design. The metalwork is precise. We'll need measurements down to the millimeter. Can you do it? He nodded slowly. It'll take time, but I can do it. Locke studied the wheel hub redesign, a simple roller bearing system using small iron cylinders set in a grease-filled housing. This reduces friction? By half, I said. Which means your horses pull easier, your carts move faster, and your axles last longer. His eyes widened. My lord, if this works. It will work, I said. And when it does, we'll retrofit every cart in Baymar. Then we'll sell the design to other cities. Tim laughed, shaking his head. You're mad, my lord. But I like it. I grinned. Good. Because we start building today. For the next 3 days, the workshop became my second home. I worked alongside Tim and Hale, cutting wood, hammering iron, and testing joint integrity. The knights passing by would stop and stare, unsure how to process the sight of their king covered in sawdust and grease. Hana brought me meals when I forgot to eat. My mother scolded me for working too hard. Momo watched from the corner, eyes wide with fascination. On the 3rd day, we assembled the prototype. The axle gleamed in the afternoon light, layered wood wrapped in iron bands, modular segments locked together, bronze-rimmed hubs holding the new roller bearings. It was beautiful. System, evaluate the prototype. Prototype evaluation, modular laminated axle, complete load capacity, 620 kg sustained, 820 kg maximum. Durability, 4x improvement over baseline. Repair time, 3.5 hours average. Technology points awarded, 25 TP. Achievement unlocked, first invention. Bonus reward, plus 10 experience points. New feature unlocked, prototype lab. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. 25 points. From a cart axle. Locke, I said, load it up. Maximum weight. Let's see what it can do. We hitched the prototype cart to 2 horses and loaded it with iron ore, 400 kilograms to start. The cart rolled smoothly over the rough ground, the new bearings reducing friction so much that the horses barely strained. Add more, I said. We piled on another 100 kilograms. Still smooth. Another 100. The cart groaned but held. At 650 kilograms, I called it. Take it on a full route, I told Locke. 6 kilometers. Report back. 2 hours later, he returned, grinning like a man who'd seen the future. My lord, he said, breathless. It didn't even creak. The workers erupted in cheers. Tim clapped me on the back. You've done it, lad. By the gods, you've actually done it. I smiled, but my mind was already moving forward. 25 points earned. Prototype lab unlocked. And this was just the beginning. System, I thought. Open the prototype lab. A new interface materialized, clean, organized, filled with possibilities. Prototype lab active. Available features. Virtual testing environment. Material simulation. Blueprint library, basic tier, design optimization tools. I selected the blueprint library, and a list unfolded. Available blueprints, basic tier. Waterwheel mill, grain processing, improved plow, agriculture, hand crank grinder, food preparation, simple loom, textile production, bellows system, metallurgy enhancement. Each one glowed faintly, waiting to be built. I closed the interface and looked out over Baymar. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold and shadow. Somewhere below, farmers tended revived soil. Miners hauled ore from hidden caves. Knights drilled in courtyards, preparing for battles they didn't know were coming. And in 3 days, we'd built something no one in this empire had seen before. I thought of my half-siblings in their palaces, plotting and scheming. They thought I was dying in exile. They had no idea I was building a future they couldn't imagine. System, I said quietly. Show me the waterwheel mill blueprint. Golden lines appeared in my vision, gears, axles, water channels, grinding stones. I studied it carefully, already planning the next steps. A mill could process grain 10 times faster than manual labor. It could free up workers for other tasks, construction, mining, defense. It could turn Baymar from a struggling city into an economic engine. And it would earn me more technology points. Enough to unlock the next tier. Enough to build faster, smarter, stronger. I closed the blueprint and turned back toward the castle. Tomorrow, we'd test the swordsmanship trials. But tonight, I'd plan the mill. Because in this world, survival wasn't enough. I was going to build an empire they'd never forget. The horn sounded across the hills like the voice of God. 2 hours had passed in what felt like 20 minutes, and the battlefield turned silent. Men emerged from blinds, ditches, and brush lines, some limping, some grinning, most covered in mud and scratches they'd wear like medals. I stood at the muster point with Lucius, watching 3 colored waves converge. Red returned first, disciplined and intact. Josh led them in formation, Momo beside him clutching a pouch bulging with headbands. Yellow came next, Mark at the front with a grim smile and 2 flags tucked under his arm. Purple lagged by 30 seconds, Gary's face tight with frustration but his men still whole. I let them catch their breath before speaking. Captains, report. Josh stepped forward. Red team secured 2 enemy flags and 47 headbands. We lost 16 men. No injuries requiring medical attention. Mark saluted. Yellow team took 2 flags and 31 headbands. Lost 22 men. 3 minor sprains. Gary's voice came harder. Purple team captured 1 flag and 53 headbands. Lost 34 men. No serious injuries. I nodded slowly, letting the numbers settle. Josh's unit wins on strategy and execution, I said. Mark's unit wins on adaptability. Gary's unit wins on individual skill. Purple straightened slightly at that. But this wasn't about winning, I continued. It was about learning what happens when you stop thinking like knights and start thinking like soldiers. I walked the line, meeting eyes. Knights charge. Soldiers survive. Knights seek glory. Soldiers bring everyone home. The field went quiet. Tomorrow we test swordsmanship, I said. Same rules, no killing, no maiming. Victory through precision, not brutality. They answered as one. Sir, yes sir. Dismissed. Eat, rest, and tend your bruises. You've earned it. The camps erupted in exhausted celebration, men clapping shoulders, recounting close calls, laughing at mud-caked faces. I watched them and felt something settle in my chest. These weren't the Empire's rejects anymore. They were mine. That evening, I sat in my chambers with the window open to let in the cold. The city below hummed with life, smithies glowing orange, market stalls packing up, children racing home before dark. Baymar was changing. Slowly. Carefully. But undeniably. I opened the system interface, and the familiar golden screen materialized in front of me. Host, Ethan Cho. Age, 15. Status, Lord of Baymar. Level, beginner, 1 condition, healthy. Current points. Development points, DP, 100. Technology points, TP, 0. Experience points, XP, 0. Bonus points, BP, 0. I frowned at the zeros. System, how do I earn technology points? The metallic voice replied without emotion. Technology points are awarded for inventing or implementing technology absent in this world. Define inventing. Creating a functional prototype of a device, system, or process not currently in use on the continent of Pinot. I leaned back, thinking. On Earth, I designed hydraulic systems, gear assemblies, and stress-tested industrial equipment. Here, they barely had functional carts. The gap wasn't just wide, it was an ocean. System, what can I unlock with technology points? A new menu unfolded before me. Prototype lab, locked cost, 25 TP. Function, access advanced blueprints and simulations for inventions. Test designs virtually before building. Workshop enhancement, locked cost, 50 TP. Function, unlock access to precision tools and measurement devices. Mass production protocols, locked cost, 100 TP. Function, enable factory scale manufacturing systems. I whistled low. 25 points for a lab. 50 for better tools. 100 for factories. The path was clear: invent something simple, earn points, unlock better systems, invent faster. A classic tech tree progression. System, give me examples of inventions worth technology points. The screen flickered. Low tier inventions, 5 to 15 TP. Improved plow design. Hand crank grain grinder. Wheelbarrow with reinforced axle. Water wheel mill. Simple pulleys. Mid-tier inventions, 20 to 40 TP. Printing press. Advanced metallurgy techniques. Irrigation systems. Glass manufacturing. High-tier inventions, 50 plus TP. Steam engines. Electrical generators. Chemical refinement processes. I studied the list. A water wheel mill could grind grain faster than 50 men with mortars. A better plow could double farm output. A hand crank grinder could free up hours of labor daily. All of them were simple. All of them were revolutionary here. But before I could decide, a knock echoed at my door. Enter. Nathan stepped inside, bowing slightly. My lord, there's a delegation from the mining operations. They're requesting an audience. I stood. Send them in. 3 men entered, dusty, tired, but respectful. I recognized Locke Wiggins immediately, the foreman I'd appointed to oversee the mineral extraction. Beside him stood 2 younger workers, both holding their caps nervously. Good evening, my lord, Locke said, his voice steady despite the exhaustion in his eyes. Good evening, Locke. What brings you here at this hour? He gestured to the men beside him. These are Gil and Farron. They work the ore transport routes between the mines and the processing estate. I nodded. I remember. You haul the raw materials for chalk and paint production. Yes, my lord. Locke hesitated, then continued. We've been having problems. What kind of problems? Gil stepped forward, twisting his cap. The carts, my lord. The axles keep snapping. I frowned. How often? 3 times this week alone, Farron added. We lose half a day's work every time one breaks. And replacing them costs silver we don't have. Locke's jaw tightened. We've tried reinforcing them with iron bands, but they still crack under the weight. The roads are rough, and the ore loads are heavy. We're losing efficiency and morale. I crossed my arms, thinking. Cart axles. A problem so mundane it would bore most nobles to tears. But here, in a city rebuilding from nothing, a broken axle wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a bottleneck strangling progress. Show me, I said. We walked through the lower district under torchlight, past sleeping homes and quiet workshops. The transport yard sat near the eastern estate, a wide dirt lot filled with wagons, carts, and piles of broken wood. Locke led me to a cart tipped on its side, its rear axle split clean down the middle. I crouched beside it, running my fingers along the fracture. The wood was dense but brittle, oak, probably. The brake followed the grain, a classic shear failure. How much weight were you carrying? I asked. About 400 kilograms, Gil said. Mostly iron ore. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. And how far do you travel per trip? 6 kilometers round trip. Twice a day. 12 kilometers daily, loaded with iron, over roads that were little more than frozen dirt paths. No wonder the axles were failing. System, I thought silently. Pull up data on axle stress tolerances and load distribution. The golden text appeared in my vision, invisible to everyone else. Axle failure analysis. Current design, single solid wood beam, 8 cm diameter. Load capacity, 300 kg sustained, 400 kg maximum before fracture risk. Primary failure points, grain shear under torsional stress, uneven load distribution. Recommended solutions. Increase axle diameter to 12 cm, reduces shear stress. Use composite construction, wood core plus metal reinforcement. Introduce bearing surfaces to reduce friction. Redesign wheel hub to distribute load more evenly. I nodded slowly. The solution wasn't just a stronger axle, it was a better system. Locke, how many carts do you operate? 15, my lord. But only 9 are functional right now. And how long does it take to build a replacement axle? 2 days, if the carpenter prioritizes it. I did the math in my head. 2 days downtime per failure. 3 failures a week. That was 6 days of lost productivity every week, nearly a full workday wasted daily. Unacceptable. I'm going to fix this, I said. Locke blinked. My lord? I'm going to design a new axle system. Stronger, more durable, and easier to repair. Give me 3 days. The 3 men exchanged glances, hope flickering in their eyes. You can do that, my lord? Farron asked. I smiled. I'm a mechanical engineer. This is what I do. Back in my chambers, I pulled out parchment, ink, and a straightedge. The room was silent except for the scratch of my quill and the occasional crackle from the fireplace. I started with the basics, force diagrams, load vectors, stress distribution. On Earth, I'd done this 1,000 times, designing shafts, axles, and drive systems for industrial machinery. Here, the principles were the same. Only the tools were different. Problem: wooden axles fail under sustained torsional and compressive stress. Solution: hybrid construction using wood and metal in a layered design. I sketched the first concept, a wooden core wrapped in an iron sleeve, with bronze bushings at the wheel hubs to reduce friction. No. Too expensive. Bronze was costly, and we didn't have enough smiths to mass produce them. I crumpled the parchment and started again. Second concept, laminated wood construction. Instead of a single solid beam, I'd use multiple thin layers of wood glued and pressed together, with the grain oriented in alternating directions. This would distribute stress more evenly and prevent catastrophic shear failures. Add iron bands at the stress points, near the hubs and at the center, and you'd have an axle that could handle twice the load at half the cost. Better. But still not perfect. I needed something easier to repair in the field. Third concept, modular axle with replaceable segments. I sketched a design where the axle was split into 3 sections, left, center, right, connected by interlocking iron sleeves. If one section cracked, you could replace just that piece instead of the entire axle. Faster repairs. Lower costs. Higher uptime. I sat back, studying the drawing. This could work. System: analyze this design. The golden text appeared. Design analysis: modular laminated axle. Estimated load capacity: 600 kg sustained, 800 kg maximum. Failure rate reduction: 75% compared to current design. Material cost: plus 30% per unit, offset by reduced replacement frequency. Repair time: reduced from 2 days to 4 hours. Technology points awarded upon prototype completion: 12 TP. I grinned. 12 points. Not bad for a cart axle. System: what if I add a secondary improvement, like a better wheel hub or a lubrication system? Additional improvements detected. Redesigned wheel hub with roller bearings, plus 8 TP. Grease reservoir system for friction reduction, plus 5 TP. Total potential TP, 25. 25 points. Exactly what I needed to unlock the prototype lab. I leaned forward, excitement building. This wasn't just about fixing carts. This was about proving that Baymar could innovate, that we didn't need the Empire's scraps to survive. We could build our own future. The next morning, I gathered Locke, Tim Myers the carpenter, and Hale Verno the blacksmith in the castle workshop. I spread the blueprints across the table. Gentlemen, I said, I'm about to change the way we build carts. Tim squinted at the drawings, tracing the lines with a calloused finger. Laminated wood. Interlocking sections. My lord, I've never seen anything like this. That's because no one's built it yet, I said. But it'll work. I guarantee it. Hale frowned at the iron sleeve design. The metalwork is precise. We'll need measurements down to the millimeter. Can you do it? He nodded slowly. It'll take time, but I can do it. Locke studied the wheel hub redesign, a simple roller bearing system using small iron cylinders set in a grease-filled housing. This reduces friction? By half, I said. Which means your horses pull easier, your carts move faster, and your axles last longer. His eyes widened. My lord, if this works. It will work, I said. And when it does, we'll retrofit every cart in Baymar. Then we'll sell the design to other cities. Tim laughed, shaking his head. You're mad, my lord. But I like it. I grinned. Good. Because we start building today. For the next 3 days, the workshop became my second home. I worked alongside Tim and Hale, cutting wood, hammering iron, and testing joint integrity. The knights passing by would stop and stare, unsure how to process the sight of their king covered in sawdust and grease. Hana brought me meals when I forgot to eat. My mother scolded me for working too hard. Momo watched from the corner, eyes wide with fascination. On the third day, we assembled the prototype. The axle gleamed in the afternoon light, layered wood wrapped in iron bands, modular segments locked together, bronze-rimmed hubs holding the new roller bearings. It was beautiful. System, evaluate the prototype. Prototype evaluation, modular laminated axle, complete load capacity, 620 kg sustained, 820 kg maximum. Durability, 4x improvement over baseline. Repair time, 3.5 hours average. Technology points awarded, 25 TP. Achievement unlocked, first invention. Bonus reward, plus 10 experience points. New feature unlocked, prototype lab. I exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. 25 points. From a cart axle. Lock, I said, load it up. Maximum weight. Let's see what it can do. We hitched the prototype cart to 2 horses and loaded it with iron ore, 400 kilograms to start. The cart rolled smoothly over the rough ground, the new bearings reducing friction so much that the horses barely strained. Add more, I said. We piled on another 100 kilograms. Still smooth. Another 100. The cart groaned but held. At 650 kilograms, I called it. Take it on a full route, I told Locke. 6 kilometers. Report back. 2 hours later, he returned, grinning like a man who'd seen the future. My lord, he said, breathless. It didn't even creak. The workers erupted in cheers. Tim clapped me on the back. You've done it, lad. By the gods, you've actually done it. I smiled, but my mind was already moving forward. 25 points earned. Prototype lab unlocked. And this was just the beginning. System, I thought. Open the prototype lab. A new interface materialized, clean, organized, filled with possibilities. Prototype lab active. Available features. Virtual testing environment. Material simulation. Blueprint library, basic tier, design optimization tools. I selected the blueprint library, and a list unfolded. Available blueprints, basic tier. Water wheel mill, grain processing, improved plow, agriculture, hand crank grinder, food preparation, simple loom, textile production, bellows system, metallurgy enhancement. Each one glowed faintly, waiting to be built. I closed the interface and looked out over Baymar. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold and shadow. Somewhere below, farmers tended revived soil. Miners hauled ore from hidden caves. Knights drilled in courtyards, preparing for battles they didn't know were coming. And in 3 days, we'd built something no one in this empire had seen before. I thought of my half-siblings in their palaces, plotting and scheming. They thought I was dying in exile. They had no idea I was building a future they couldn't imagine. System, I said quietly. Show me the water wheel mill blueprint. Golden lines appeared in my vision, gears, axles, water channels, grinding stones. I studied it carefully, already planning the next steps. A mill could process grain 10 times faster than manual labor. It could free up workers for other tasks, construction, mining, defense. It could turn Baymar from a struggling city into an economic engine. And it would earn me more technology points. Enough to unlock the next tier. Enough to build faster, smarter, stronger. I closed the blueprint and turned back toward the castle. Tomorrow, we'd test the swordsmanship trials. But tonight, I'd plan the mill. Because in this world, survival wasn't enough. I was going to build an empire they'd never forget. The courtyard woke before the sun. Frost clung to the stone like silver paint, and the air tasted sharp enough to cut. 300 men stood in formation, their breath rising in clouds, their hands resting on sword hilts. Today was the second phase of the exam. Yesterday had tested their minds. Today would test their steel. I stood among them, not at the front, but in the third row of Josh's unit, just another knight in a sea of cloth and leather. No crown. No title. No commands. Lucius had made that clear at dawn. For today's trial, he'd said, voice carrying across the yard, His Majesty is not your king. He is a participant. I am your commander. You will address me as such, and you will follow my orders without question. The men had glanced at me, uncertain. I'd simply nodded and stepped into rank. If they were going to respect the chain of command, they needed to see me respect it too. Lucius walked the lines now, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He stopped at the center and raised his voice. Yesterday you fought with your heads. Today you fight with your hands. He gestured to the racks of practice swords, blunted steel, weighted and balanced, but still capable of breaking bones if used carelessly. The rules are simple, Lucius continued. No killing. No crippling. No strikes to the throat, groin, or spine. Victory is achieved by disarmament, submission, or incapacitation. He paused, letting the words settle. Each team will fight in rotation. Red versus yellow. Yellow versus purple. Purple versus red. The top 3 fighters from each team will advance to the finals. A ripple of tension moved through the ranks. Commander Lucius, Mark called out. What determines top fighter? Speed of victory, efficiency of technique, and control under pressure, Lucius replied. I will judge. My word is final. No one argued. Lucius turned to Josh. Captain, your unit will face Captain Mark's unit first. Select your fighters. Josh stepped forward and began calling names. I stayed silent, waiting. When he called Ethan Cho, I stepped out of line without hesitation. The men shifted, eyes following me. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. Fighting their king, even in an exam, felt dangerous. But that was the point. If they couldn't treat me like an equal here, they'd never trust me as a leader in real battle. The first matches began with controlled aggression. Knights circled each other, testing distance, probing defenses. Steel rang against steel in sharp, rhythmic bursts. Some fights ended quickly, a disarm, a trip, a well-placed strike to the ribs. Others dragged on, both fighters evenly matched, sweat dripping despite the cold. I fought twice in the first round. The first opponent was a page named Rolf, young, eager, and predictable. I let him attack first, reading his rhythm, then stepped inside his guard and swept his legs. He hit the ground hard, and I pressed the blunted tip of my sword to his chest. Yield, I said. He nodded, breathless. I yield. The second fight lasted longer. A lieutenant named Gregor, older and more experienced. He fought defensively, conserving energy, waiting for me to overcommit. I didn't. We circled for 30 seconds, exchanging feints, testing angles. Then I shifted my weight left, drew his guard high, and struck low, a quick tap to his knee that buckled his stance. Before he could recover, I hooked his blade and twisted, sending it spinning from his grip. Yield. Yield, he grunted, rubbing his knee. I helped him up, and we both returned to the sidelines. Lucius watched everything, his face unreadable. By midday, the field had narrowed. Red team's top 3, myself, Trey, and a quiet squire named Dennison. Yellow team's top 3, Mark, a lieutenant named Oren, and a broad-shouldered page called Vex. Purple team's top 3, Gary, Barry Jacks, the scout who'd impressed me during the strategy exam, and a tall, lean knight I didn't recognize. His name was Kalen Moss. I'd seen him around camp, but he'd never stood out. Average height. Plain face. Unremarkable in every way. Until now. Kalen had won all 4 of his matches in under 20 seconds each. Not through brute strength. Through precision. I watched his 5th match carefully. His opponent was a seasoned squire named Tam, known for his reach and power. The moment the match started, Tam lunged forward with a heavy overhead strike. Kalen sidestepped, barely, and his blade flicked out like a viper. Tap. Tam's wrist. The practice sword clattered to the ground. Match over. No wasted movement. No hesitation. No emotion. Lucius called the end, and Kalen returned to his position without a word. I felt something tighten in my chest. That wasn't standard knight training. Knights here fought with strength and endurance, using leverage and conditioning to overwhelm opponents. Kalen fought like he was ending lives. Fast. Silent. Efficient. I opened the system interface, keeping my expression neutral. System, analyze Kalen Moss's fighting style. Golden text appeared in my vision, visible only to me. Target, Kalen Moss. Age, 24. Rank, Squire, Purple Team Combat Style Analysis. Strike Efficiency, 97%, targets joints, tendons, pressure points. Movement Pattern, Non-Standard. Does not match Arcadian Knight Doctrine. Probability of Formal Assassination Training, 89%. Suggested Origin, Foreign Military Academy or Covert Operative Training. Warning, subject may pose security risk. I closed the interface slowly, my mind racing. 89%. That wasn't a guess. That was a near certainty. Someone in my ranks had been trained to kill quietly and efficiently. And I had no idea why he was here. The finals began an hour later. 9 fighters. 3 from each team. Lucius announced the bracket. First match, Trey vs Oren. Second match, Gary vs Dennison. Third match, myself vs Vex. Fourth match, Mark vs Barry. Fifth match, Kalen vs the winner of match 1. I watched Trey and Oren clash, a hard, grinding fight that ended with Trey's superior endurance wearing Oren down. Gary crushed Dennison with raw power, barely breaking a sweat. My match with Vex was straightforward. He was strong but slow. I used speed and angles, disarming him in 40 seconds. Mark defeated Barry in a close match, but Barry's tactical mind nearly turned it around twice. Then came the match I'd been waiting for. Trey vs Kalen. Trey was one of my best, fast, disciplined, and relentless. But the moment the match started, I knew he was in trouble. Kalen moved like water. Every strike Trey threw, Kalen redirected. Every opening Trey created, Kalen closed before he could exploit it. 30 seconds in, Kalen's blade tapped Trey's elbow, a nerve strike. Trey's fingers spasmed, and his grip weakened. Kalen followed with a spinning strike to the back of Trey's knee. Trey dropped. Kalen's blade hovered at his throat. Yield. Trey's jaw tightened, but he nodded. I yield. The courtyard went silent. Kalen stepped back, his expression blank, and returned to his position. I looked at Lucius. His eyes were narrowed, studying Kalen like a puzzle he couldn't solve. He'd seen it too. The semifinals continued. Gary fought Mark and won through sheer aggression. I fought Barry and won by exploiting a gap in his defense during a high feint. That left the final match. Myself versus Gary. And Kalen versus the winner. Gary and I stepped into the center of the courtyard. The men formed a circle around us, their voices low and tense. Gary grinned, rolling his shoulders. No hard feelings, my king? I smiled back. None. Just don't hold back. Wasn't planning to. Lucius raised his hand. Begin. Gary came at me hard and fast, using his size and strength to pressure me into defense. I gave ground, letting him think he had the advantage. Then I pivoted, redirected his momentum, and struck the inside of his wrist. His sword dipped. I followed with a low sweep, hooking his ankle. He stumbled, and I pressed my blade to his shoulder. Yield. He laughed, breathless. Yield. Damn, you're quick. I helped him up, and the men cheered. But my focus was already shifting. Kalen stood at the edge of the circle, waiting. Expressionless. Unreadable. Lucius called us forward. Final match, he announced. Ethan Cho vs Kalen Moss. The courtyard fell silent. I stepped into the circle, and Kalen mirrored me. We stood 5 paces apart, blades lowered, eyes locked. Begin. Kalen didn't charge. He circled, footwork smooth and measured, watching me the way a predator watches prey. I matched his movement, keeping my guard neutral. Most fighters revealed their intent in the first exchange. Kalen revealed nothing. I tested him with a quick thrust, just a flick, no commitment. He sidestepped and countered with a strike aimed at my ribs. I parried, and our blades met with a sharp ring. Fast. I pressed forward, chaining 3 strikes, high, low, mid. He deflected all 3 without stepping back. Then he attacked. His blade moved in tight, controlled arcs, wrist strikes, joint locks, nerve taps. I blocked the first 2, but the third grazed my forearm. Pain shot up my arm, and my grip weakened for half a second. He saw it and pivoted, going for a disarm. I twisted my wrist, redirecting his blade, and countered with a palm strike to his chest. He staggered back, eyes narrowing. For the first time, I saw emotion flicker across his face. Surprise. We circled again, both breathing harder now. The men around us were silent, watching every movement. I adjusted my stance, shifting my weight forward. Kalen's eyes tracked the change. Then I attacked. Not with the flashy techniques of a knight, but with the brutal efficiency of a soldier. Low strikes. Fast transitions. No wasted motion. I wasn't trying to disarm him. I was trying to break his rhythm. Our blades clashed 6 times in 3 seconds. On the 7th, I hooked his guard and pulled, creating an opening. I stepped inside his reach and drove my shoulder into his chest. He stumbled, and I swept his legs. He hit the ground hard, and I pressed my blade to his throat. Yield. For a long moment, he didn't move. His eyes met mine, and I saw something shift behind them. Recognition. Calculation. Fear. I yield, he said quietly. I stepped back and extended my hand. He hesitated, then took it. I pulled him to his feet, and the courtyard erupted in cheers. But I didn't let go of his hand. I leaned in, close enough that only he could hear. We need to talk, I said. Tonight. Alone. His expression didn't change, but his grip tightened for a fraction of a second. Yes, my king. The rest of the day passed in a blur of celebration and exhaustion. The men feasted, drank, and recounted every match in exaggerated detail. Lucius pulled me aside before the evening meal. That last fighter, he said quietly. Kalen. Did you notice? I noticed. He fights like an assassin. I know. Lucius's eyes hardened. Do you want me to interrogate him? I shook my head. No. I'll handle it. Ethan. I'll handle it, I repeated, meeting his gaze. Lucius studied me for a long moment, then nodded. As you wish. But if he's a threat, then I'll deal with him. Trust me. He sighed. I do. Just be careful. That night, I waited in my chambers with the fire burning low. The castle was quiet, the men asleep after the long day. A soft knock echoed at the door. Enter. Kalen stepped inside, his movements careful and controlled. He closed the door behind him and stood at attention. You wanted to see me, my king? I gestured to the chair across from me. Sit. He hesitated, then obeyed. I poured 2 cups of water and slid one across the table. Relax, Kalen. This isn't an interrogation. Isn't it? I smiled faintly. Not yet. He didn't touch the water. I leaned back, studying him. You're good, I said. Better than good. You fight like someone who's been trained to kill, not to duel. His expression didn't change. Most knights here learned from the imperial academies, I continued. Their techniques are standardized, predictable. Yours aren't. Silence. So I'll ask you directly, I said. Where did you learn to fight? For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, slowly, he spoke. I wasn't always a squire, my king. I gathered that. What were you? His jaw tightened. A blade. For whom? Another pause. Prince Eli Juan. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Eli. My half-brother. The crown prince. The one who'd poisoned me. I kept my face neutral, but my mind was racing. Explain. Kalen exhaled slowly. I was part of his covert unit. We operated outside official channels, intelligence gathering, asset elimination, message interception. Assassins. Yes. And now you're here. In my army. Why? His eyes met mine, and for the first time, I saw something honest in them. Fear. Because Eli ordered me to be. My chest tightened. He sent you to spy on me. No. Kalen shook his head. He sent me to confirm you were dead. The words hung in the air like smoke. The poison, I said quietly. Nalat Wisp, Kalen confirmed. 5 months to full degradation. No cure. Eli wanted verification before moving forward with his plans. What plans? Using Baymar as a hidden training ground. Raising an army off the books, far from the king's eyes. Once you were dead, he planned to occupy the city under the pretense of securing an abandoned territory. I leaned forward. And when you saw I wasn't dying, I reported that you'd recovered. Eli didn't believe me. He thought I was lying to buy time. So he cut you off. Kalen nodded. I'm a loose end now. If I return to the capital, I'm dead. If I stay here and Eli takes Baymar, I'm dead. Which means you need me to survive. Yes. I sat back, thinking. This changed everything. Kalen wasn't just a spy, he was a window into Eli's network. A double agent, if I played this right. Or a liability, if I didn't. How many others did Eli send? I asked. Just me. Are you certain? Yes. Covert insertions are always single operator. Easier to deny, harder to trace. I studied his face, searching for deception. The system chimed softly in my mind. Lie detection analysis, statement probability 91% true. Good enough. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You're going to stay in Baymar. You're going to continue serving as a squire under Gary. And you're going to feed Eli false information. Kalen's eyes widened slightly. You want me to turn? I want you to survive. And I want to know what my brother is planning. If he discovers I've flipped. He won't. Because you're going to be very, very careful. Kalen stared at me, weighing the offer. What do I get in return? Protection. A future. And a chance to be something other than a blade. He was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. What do you need me to do? I smiled. Tell him I'm barely holding on. The land is struggling. The people are starving. I'm desperate and weak. And if he asks for proof? Send him a report about failed harvests and broken infrastructure. Make it believable. Kalen nodded slowly. And in reality? In reality, we're building something he can't imagine. I stood and extended my hand. Welcome to Baymar, Kalen. The real Baymar. He stood and took my hand. His grip was firm. I won't let you down, my king. I know. Because if you do, I'll kill you myself. He smiled faintly. Understood. After Kalen left, I sat by the fire, staring into the flames. A spy in my ranks. Sent by the brother who'd tried to poison me. Most rulers would have executed him on the spot. But I wasn't most rulers. I was an engineer. And engineers didn't waste useful tools. I opened the system interface. System, log Kalen Moss as Asset Alpha 1. Monitor his communications and flag any anomalies. Asset logged. Monitoring active. I closed the screen and leaned back. Eli thought he was playing chess. He had no idea I'd just turned one of his pieces. And soon, I'd have eyes inside his entire network. I smiled into the firelight. Let him think I was dying. Let him think Baymar was failing. When he finally came for me, he'd find a kingdom he couldn't break. And an army he couldn't beat. Episode 12. Morning came cold and clear. I stood at my window watching the city wake, smoke rising from chimneys, workers heading toward the mines, children running through frost-dusted streets. Baymar was alive in ways it hadn't been 2 months ago. But beneath that life, new threats were coiling. Eli's shadow stretched longer than I'd thought. A hidden army. Occupation plans. And now, a spy I'd turned into a double agent. The game had shifted from survival to something more dangerous. Strategy. I dressed quickly and made my way to the inner courtyard. The knights were already assembled, moving through their morning drills with the kind of discipline that would have seemed impossible 8 weeks ago. Lucius stood at the center, arms crossed, watching every movement. He saw me approach and nodded. My king. The men are ready for assignment rotation. Good. But first, I need to speak with the captains. Privately. His eyebrow raised slightly, but he didn't question it. Josh, Mark, Gary, with me. The 3 captains broke from their units and followed us into the castle's war room, a modest chamber with a single table, a map of Baymar pinned to the wall, and little else. I closed the door behind us. What's this about? Mark asked, his usual easy smile replaced with focused attention. I looked at each of them in turn. Last night, I had a conversation with Kalen Moss. Gary stiffened. The squire who fights like a ghost? The same. He's not just a squire. He's a trained operative sent by Prince Eli to spy on us. The room went silent. Josh's hand dropped to his sword hilt instinctively. You want us to arrest him? No. I want you to help me use him. Mark frowned. Use him how? Kalen has agreed to feed false information back to Eli while giving us intelligence on his network. As far as my brother knows, Baymar is struggling, barely surviving, no threat to anyone. Gary's eyes narrowed. And in reality? In reality, we're building something he can't predict. But we need to be careful. If Eli suspects Kalen has turned, we lose our window into his operations. Lucius leaned forward, hands flat on the table. This is dangerous, Ethan. If Kalen is playing both sides. He's not. He's a dead man if he goes back to the capital, and he knows it. His only path forward is with us. You're certain? Josh asked. I nodded. The system confirmed it. His statements carry a 91% probability of truth. The captains exchanged glances. What do you need from us? Mark asked. 2 things. First, treat Kalen normally. No special attention, no suspicion. He remains a squire under Gary, nothing more. Gary nodded. Understood. Second, I need you to help me build a counterintelligence network. If Eli sent 1 spy, he might send more. We need eyes on everyone, workers, merchants, even servants. That's a lot of people to watch, Josh said slowly. Which is why we'll be strategic. Lucius, I want you to create a discrete unit, 5 men, trusted and smart. Their job is to observe, listen, and report anomalies. No one outside this room knows their real purpose. A shadow unit, Lucius said thoughtfully. I can do that. Good. Mark, you'll handle logistics. If we're feeding Eli false reports, we need to make sure the evidence matches. Failed crops that are actually thriving. Broken infrastructure that's fully functional. Make it convincing. Mark grinned. I can make a working mill look like a ruin. Leave it to me. Josh, you'll manage external communications. Any merchant, messenger, or traveler entering Baymar gets logged. I want to know who's coming, who they're meeting, and why. Consider it done. I looked at Gary. And you'll keep Kalen close. Learn his patterns, his contacts. If he slips, you'll be the first to know. He won't slip, Gary said quietly. Not on my watch. I nodded. Then we're agreed. This stays between us. Not even the other knights can know. They each placed a hand on the table, a silent oath. For Baymar, I said. For Baymar, they echoed. After the meeting, I walked to the lower district with Hana and Momo. The streets were busier now, vendors selling fish and vegetables, children playing, workers hauling materials toward the construction sites. We passed the new school building, still unfinished, but the walls were up and the roof beams in place. Tim Myers had delivered the first batch of chalkboards 2 days ago, and they were stacked carefully inside, wrapped in cloth to protect the painted surfaces. When will the school open? Hana asked, her voice bright with excitement. 2 weeks, maybe 3, I said. We're still training teachers and finalizing the curriculum. I can't wait, she said. I've been practicing my letters every night. Momo tugged my sleeve. Brother Ethan, will I have to go to school too? I ruffled his hair. Everyone goes to school, Momo. Even me. His eyes widened. You're going to be a student? Sometimes. Other times, I'll be a teacher. Learning never stops, even for kings. He thought about that for a moment, then grinned. Then I'll be the best student. Hana laughed, and I couldn't help but smile. We continued toward the riverbank on the western edge of the lower district. This was where I planned to build the water wheel mill. The river, small but steady, cut through Baymar's outskirts before emptying into the sea. Most people ignored it. Too shallow for boats, too cold for swimming. But to me, it was perfect. I crouched by the water's edge, studying the current. Fast enough to turn a wheel. Deep enough to sustain it year-round. System, analyze the river flow and terrain. Golden text appeared. River analysis. Average flow rate, 2.3 meters per second. Depth, 1.2 to 1.8 meters. Optimal wheel diameter, 4 meters. Estimated power output, 3.5 kilowatts, sufficient for grain milling and light manufacturing terrain assessment. Stable riverbanks, minimal erosion risk. Foundation construction recommended, stone base with wooden supports. Estimated build time, 12 to 15 days, with skilled labor. I stood, satisfied. This is it, I said. We'll build the mill here. Hana looked at the river, then at me. How does it work? I picked up a stick and began sketching in the dirt. The river's current turns a large wheel. The wheel connects to a shaft, which connects to gears inside the mill building. Those gears turn grinding stones that crush grain into flour. Momo watched, fascinated. So the water does all the work? Exactly. One mill can do the work of 50 people grinding by hand. It's faster, more efficient, and it frees up workers for other tasks. Hana's eyes lit up. That's amazing. It's just the beginning, I said. Once we prove the concept, we can build more. Mills for textiles, for metalworking, for anything that needs repetitive motion. I opened the system's prototype lab and pulled up the water wheel mill blueprint. It was elegant in its simplicity, a vertical wheel connected to horizontal gears, all housed in a wooden structure with a stone foundation. The grinding stones would sit on the second floor, with grain fed from the top and flour collected at the bottom. System, estimate technology points for completion. Water wheel mill, grain processing estimated TP reward, 18 TP. Bonus TP for optimization, plus 5 TP, if efficiency exceeds baseline design total potential, 23 TP. 23 points. Combined with the 25 I already had, that would give me 48. Close to unlocking the next tier of blueprints. Hana, Momo, let's head back. I need to meet with Tim and the construction crew. By midday, I'd assembled a team. Tim Myers would handle the carpentry, the wheel, gears, and housing. Hale Verno would forge the metal components, axles, brackets, and grinding stone supports. Locke Wiggins would oversee the laborers, digging the foundation, hauling materials, assembling the structure. I spread the blueprints across a table in the workshop. Gentlemen, this is a water wheel mill. It uses the river's current to grind grain automatically. Tim leaned over the drawings, eyes wide. Automatically? Without horses or men? Without either. The water does the work. Hale traced the gear assembly with a thick finger. These ratios. They multiply the wheel's force? Exactly. A slow turning wheel becomes fast grinding stones through mechanical advantage. Locke whistled low. If this works, my lord, it'll change everything. It will work, I said. But it requires precision. Every gear must mesh perfectly. Every bearing must turn smoothly. One mistake, and the whole system fails. Tim nodded seriously. I'll need 3 days to build the wheel. Maybe 4. The axle and gears will take a week, Hale added. Custom forging, tight tolerances. And the foundation? I asked Locke. Stone and timber supports? 5 days, weather permitting. I did the math. 15 days total if everything goes perfectly. Call it 20 to account for problems. We'll make it happen, my lord, Locke said. I looked at each of them. This isn't just a mill. It's proof that Baymar can innovate. That we don't need the Empire's permission to advance. Tim grinned. Then let's show them what we can do. The next 2 weeks blurred together. Every morning, I trained with the knights, drilling formations, testing endurance, refining combat techniques. Every afternoon, I worked at the mill site, hauling stones, measuring angles, adjusting gear ratios. The men saw their king covered in mud and sawdust, and something shifted in how they looked at me. I wasn't just a noble giving orders. I was one of them. Grace and Hannah continued preparing for the school's opening. Ara helped them, her health improving daily now that she had warmth, food, and medicine. Momo shadowed Josh like a duckling, absorbing everything the captain taught him. And Kalen? Kalen played his role perfectly. He trained with Purple Team, kept his head down, and twice a week, sent coded messages back to Eli through a merchant contact in the Central District. Each message painted Baymar as struggling, food shortages, low morale, infrastructure failures. All lies. But convincing ones. Gary reported that Kalen showed no signs of deviation. The system's monitoring confirmed it. And slowly, carefully, Kalen began sharing information about Eli's network. Names. Locations. Operatives. A hidden fortress in the northern mountains where Eli trained his covert units. A network of merchants who moved money and messages across the empire. Contacts in the royal guard loyal to Eli, not the king. Each piece of intelligence was a weapon I could use later. But for now, I kept it quiet. Let Eli think he was winning. On the 14th day, the mill's foundation was complete. Stone blocks set deep into the riverbank, reinforced with timber bracing. The structure rose 3 meters above the water, solid and unyielding. On the 16th day, Tim finished the water wheel, a beautiful piece of craftsmanship. 4 meters in diameter, 16 curved paddles, balanced perfectly on a central axle. We lowered it into position using ropes and pulleys, and when it touched the water, the current caught it immediately. The wheel turned. Slow at first, then steady. The men cheered. On the 19th day, Hale delivered the gear assembly. We installed it carefully, connecting the wheel's axle to the grinding mechanism inside the mill house. Every tooth meshed perfectly. Every bearing turned smoothly. On the 20th day, we ran the first test. I poured grain into the hopper at the top of the mill. The wheel turned. The gears engaged. The grinding stones rotated. And flour, fine, white, perfect flour, poured out the bottom. The workers erupted in celebration. Tim clapped me on the back, laughing. You did it, lad. By the gods, you actually did it. Locke was already calculating output. At this rate, we can process 500 kilograms a day. Maybe more. Hale just shook his head, grinning. Magic. That's what this is. I smiled, exhausted but satisfied. It's not magic. It's engineering. The system chimed. Water wheel mill, grain processing, complete. Technology points awarded, 18 TP. Efficiency bonus achieved, plus 7 TP, exceeded baseline output by 22% total TP earned, 25 TP. Current TP balance, 50 TP. New feature unlocked, workshop enhancement. New blueprints available, mid-tier inventions. I opened the system interface. Workshop enhancement, available. Cost, 50 TP. Unlocks, precision measurement tools, advanced metallurgy techniques, mechanical testing equipment. I hesitated. 50 points was everything I had. But the workshop upgrade would let me build faster, better, and more reliably. It was an investment in the future. I selected it. Workshop enhancement, purchased. TP balance, 0. New tools available. Calipers, 0.1 mm precision. Micrometers. Hardness testing equipment. Improved forge design, higher temperatures, better control mechanical advantage calculators. The knowledge flooded my mind, not just how to use the tools, but how to make them. I could teach Tim to craft calipers from scrap metal. I could show Hale how to build a better forge. I could turn Baymar's workshop into something that rivaled the Empire's best facilities. I closed the system and looked at the mill. Water turning the wheel. Will turning the gears. Gears grinding the grain. Simple. Elegant. Revolutionary. Around me, workers were already talking about what else we could build. Mills for cloth. Mills for metal. Mills for anything that needed power. I felt the future pulling at me, bright and vast and full of possibility. But beneath that excitement, a darker thought lingered. Eli was still out there. Still plotting. Still dangerous. And now that Baymar was thriving, he'd be more interested than ever. I needed to move faster. Build stronger. Prepare for the war that was coming. Because it wasn't a question of if. It was a question of when. That night, I met with Kalen in the shadows behind the castle. Any word from Eli? I asked. He nodded. A coded message arrived this morning. He's pleased with my reports. He thinks you're barely holding on. Good. Keep it that way. There's more, Kalen said, his voice lowering. He mentioned a timeline. 6 months. For what? For moving on Baymar. He's preparing his hidden forces. Once winter ends and the road's clear, he'll march. My chest tightened. How many men? 2,000. Maybe more. I did the math. I had 300 knights. Even with training, even with superior tactics, we'd be outnumbered 6 to 1. We'll need allies, I said quietly. Or better weapons, Kalen replied. I looked at him. What do you know about cannons? His eyes widened slightly. Artillery? That's forbidden knowledge. The Empire. The Empire exiled me. I don't care what they forbid. Kalen was silent for a moment. Then he smiled, a cold, dangerous smile. If you're serious about building cannons, I know someone who might help. An old weapons master who served in the Eastern campaigns. He was exiled for experimenting with explosive powder. Where is he? Last I heard, he was living in the western fishing villages. Hiding. Find him, I said. Bring him to me. Quietly. Kalen nodded. It'll take a few days. Take a week if you need to. But bring him. He slipped away into the darkness, silent as smoke. I stood there for a long moment, staring up at the stars. 6 months. That's all I had. 6 months to turn Baymar into a fortress. 6 months to build an army. 6 months to create weapons this world had never seen. I turned and walked back toward the castle. The mills will turn steadily in the distance, a rhythmic pulse that sounded almost like a heartbeat. Baymar was alive. And soon, it would be armed. The eastern sky burned orange as I stood on the castle walls, watching the city wake beneath me. Smoke rose from 100 chimneys, and the waterwheel mill's rhythmic creaking carried on the cold wind, a sound that had already become Baymar's heartbeat. 23 days since we'd completed the mill. 23 days of grinding grain faster than human hands ever could. The surplus had already begun transforming the city's economy. Farmers sold excess wheat to neighboring villages. The treasury collected taxes on trade. Workers earned steady wages and spent them on better clothes, warmer homes, and their children's futures. Progress, I thought. Real, measurable progress. But progress painted a target on our backs. I opened the system interface and checked the monitoring logs. Kalen's latest message to Eli had been sent 2 days ago, another report of failing infrastructure and desperate conditions. Eli's response had been predictable: continue observation. Report weekly. Maintain deep cover. The fool actually believed it. My king. I turned to find Lucius climbing the stairs to the rampart, his breath fogging in the morning cold. He wore his usual polished armor, but there was something different in his expression today. Concern, maybe. Or calculation. Lucius. You're up early. As are you. He joined me at the wall, looking out over Baymar. Trouble sleeping? Something like that. We stood in silence for a moment, both of us watching the mill wheel turn. The men are talking, Lucius said finally. About the mill. About the training. About you. What are they saying? That you're different from other nobles. That you work alongside them instead of above them. That you're building something worth fighting for. He paused. They're ready, Ethan. If war comes, they'll follow you. War is coming, I said quietly. The question is whether we'll be ready when it arrives. Lucius's jaw tightened. You've had news. Eli plans to move on Baymar in 6 months. 2,000 men, maybe more. Then we need allies. The other border lords won't help. They're loyal to the throne, and the throne wants me dead. I turned to face him. We're on our own, Lucius. Which means we need to be stronger, smarter, and better equipped than any force Eli can field. You're talking about the cannons. I nodded. Among other things. Kalen is searching for a weapons master, someone who can help us manufacture gunpowder and build artillery. If we can mount cannons on these walls, we can defend against an army 10 times our size. Lucius studied me carefully. And if Eli discovers what we're building? He won't. Not until it's too late. You have a lot of faith in a man who was sent to spy on you. I have faith in self-preservation, I corrected. Kalen knows that his only chance of survival is with us. He'll play his role until the end. Lucius didn't look convinced, but he didn't argue. Instead, he changed the subject. There's something else. Nathan brought me a report from the mining operations. They've discovered a new vein in the western caves, copper, possibly silver mixed in. I felt a spark of excitement. How much? Enough to justify a dedicated extraction team. Locke estimates we could pull 200 kilograms a month without straining resources. 200 kilograms of copper. That was enough for gears, pipes, electrical wiring, hell, enough for cannon barrels if we alloyed it with tin to make bronze. Assign 20 men to the copper operation, I said. Full wages, safety equipment, rotating shifts. And keep it quiet. I don't want word spreading beyond Baymar. Understood. One more thing. How's the shadow unit progressing? Lucius's expression darkened slightly. The 5 men you requested, I've selected them. Barry Jacks, Terry, Dennison, and 2 others, Finn Cole and Marcus Webb. All smart, all discreet, all loyal. Good. Have them start monitoring the merchant traffic. Every trader, every messenger, every stranger who enters the city. I want to know who they are, who they're meeting, and what they're carrying. You expect more spies? I expect Eli to be thorough. If Kalen was the first, there will be others. Lucius nodded grimly. I'll brief them today. Do it personally. No written orders, no witnesses. This stays between us. As you wish. We stood together for another moment, watching the sun climb higher. Below us, children ran through the streets, their laughter carrying on the wind. Workers hauled materials toward construction sites. Fishermen prepared their nets for the morning catch. A city coming back to life. A city worth protecting. 6 months, Lucius said quietly. That's not much time. Then we'd better not waste any of it. After Lucius left, I descended from the walls and made my way to the workshop. Tim Myers was already there, bent over a workbench with the new calipers I'd taught him to make. The precision tool gleamed in his hands, simple metal strips and a sliding measurement scale, but revolutionary in this world where most craftsmen worked by eye and intuition. Morning, my lord, Tim said, not looking up from his work. These calipers are witchcraft, I swear. I can measure to the width of a hair. Not witchcraft. Mathematics. I joined him at the bench. How are the Will Hub repairs coming? Finished 3 yesterday, starting 4 more today. With these tools, I can make them identical down to the smallest detail. No more guesswork, no more trial and error. I smiled. That was exactly the point. Standardization. Interchangeable parts. The foundation of industrial manufacturing. Good. Because I need you to start on something new. Tim set down the calipers and turned to face me fully. What are we building now? I pulled out a rolled parchment and spread it across the workbench. The drawing showed a simple but elegant device, a printing press. Tim studied it, frowning. What is it? It's called a printing press. It stamps letters onto paper, allowing you to create identical copies of a document hundreds of times faster than writing by hand. His eyes widened. How? I pointed to the diagram. You carve individual letters out of wood or metal, each one raised, like a seal. You arrange them into words, coat them with ink, press paper against them, and you have a printed page. Rearrange the letters, and you can print something entirely different. By the gods. Tim breathed. You could copy an entire book in a day. Or a week, depending on the book. But yes. This device could change everything: education, communication, record keeping. Once people can read, they can learn. Once they can learn, they can innovate. Tim was already studying the mechanical components, The frame, the press mechanism, the paper holder. I'll need Hale's help for the metal parts. And we'll need someone who can carve the letters precisely. I know a scribe in the Central District, I said. Old man named Aldrich. Bring him into the project, but keep the details quiet. I don't want this spreading until we have a working prototype. Understood, my lord. Tim's hands were already twitching, eager to start. How long do I have? 4 weeks. Maybe 5. I'll have it done in 3. I grinned. That's the spirit. I spent the rest of the morning at the farmlands, inspecting the crop rotation schedule with Leor and Pat. The fields had transformed completely. What had been barren, cracked earth 3 months ago now burst with winter wheat, root vegetables, and cold weather greens. The soil's only getting better, Pat said, kneeling to scoop a handful of dark, rich earth. Every season we plant, it gives back more. Your methods? They're like magic, my king. Not magic. Science. I stood, brushing dirt from my hands. Soil is alive, millions of tiny organisms breaking down organic matter, creating nutrients. Feed them, and they feed the plants. It's a cycle. Leor nodded thoughtfully. We've started experimenting like you taught us. Adding different types of compost, testing which crops grow best in which sections. The eastern fields respond better to legumes, the western fields to grains. Exactly. Pay attention to what the land tells you, and adjust accordingly. I looked across the fields, calculating. How much surplus are we producing? About 30% more than we need, Leor said. We've been selling it in the villages to the south. Good coin, too. Keep half for emergency reserves, I instructed. Sell the other half. And start setting aside seeds. We'll expand the fields by another 100 plots next season. 100? Pat's eyes widened. That's a lot of land to work. Which is why we're hiring more farmers. I want 200 workers on the farmlands by spring. Advertise fair wages, provide tools and training, and make it clear that everyone, men and women, can apply. Leor grinned. The women are going to love that. Most lords think farming is men's work. Most lords are idiots. If someone can work the land, I don't care what they are. We need every hand we can get. We spent another hour discussing irrigation improvements and pest control strategies. The system had given me knowledge of crop rotation, but the farmers had generations of local wisdom. Which plants attracted beneficial insects, which herbs repelled pests, which weather patterns signaled good or bad harvests. Working together, we were building something sustainable. As I walked back toward the castle, a young messenger intercepted me, one of Locke's boys from the mining operations. My lord. He was out of breath, face flushed. Foreman Locke sent me. Says it's urgent. My chest tightened. What happened? They found something in the limestone caves. Something big. I reached the western estate within 20 minutes, Trey and 2 knights flanking me. Locke stood outside the cave entrance, covered in dust and looking shaken. My lord, he said, bowing quickly. I'm sorry to pull you away, but you need to see this. What did you find? It's easier to show you. He led us into the cave, torches lighting the way. We descended deeper than I'd gone before, past the familiar veins of limestone and saltpeter, through narrow passages that opened into a massive underground chamber. And there, glittering in the torchlight like a dragon's hoard, were crystals. Huge, geometric formations jutting from the walls and ceiling, some as tall as a man, others small as my fist. They caught the light and split it into rainbows, painting the cave in colors that seemed almost otherworldly. System, I thought silently. Analyze the crystals. The golden text appeared. Crystal analysis, primary composition, quartz, silicon dioxide, secondary traces, amethyst, iron oxide impurities, citrine, aluminum/iron impurities, applications. Piezoelectric properties, pressure generates electrical charge, optical components, lenses, prisms, timekeeping devices, quartz oscillators, decorative/luxury goods. Estimated deposit size, 2 to 3 metric tons. Technology points potential, 30 TP. If utilized for advanced applications. I stared at the readout, my mind racing. Quartz. Not just decorative stones, industrial materials. On Earth, quartz was essential for electronics, optics, and precision timekeeping. Here, it could be the foundation of technologies this world had never imagined. My lord? Locke's voice pulled me back. Is it valuable? Very. But not for the reasons you think. I turned to face him. This cave is now restricted. No one enters without my explicit permission. Post 2 guards at the entrance, rotating shifts. Tell them it's a safety precaution, unstable formations, risk of collapse. Locke frowned but nodded. As you command. But what are we going to do with it? That depends on whether I can figure out how to use it. I looked back at the crystals, their facets glowing in the torchlight. For now, it's our secret. No reports, no records. Understood? Understood, my lord. We left the cave, and I made Locke swear his workers to silence. A few silver coins and a reminder of the king's generosity ensured their cooperation. As I walked back toward the castle, my mind buzzed with possibilities. Quartz oscillators for precise timekeeping. Optical lenses for telescopes and microscopes. Piezoelectric sensors for pressure measurement. And if I could figure out how to grow synthetic crystals, the applications multiplied exponentially. But all of that required knowledge I didn't fully have. The system provided basics, but advanced applications, especially electronics, needed experimentation, refinement, and tools I hadn't built yet. System, what would it take to unlock advanced crystal applications? Requirements. Prototype lab, unlocked. Workshop enhancement, unlocked. Research facility, locked. Cost, 75 TP chemical processing equipment, locked. Cost, 50 TP estimated timeline, 6 to 8 months for basic applications, 2 to 3 years for advanced electronics. 6 to 8 months. I didn't have that kind of time. But I could start small. Optical lenses, maybe. Or basic piezoelectric applications. I filed the information away and refocused on immediate priorities. Cannons. Gunpowder. Fortifications. The quartz was a gift for the future. Right now, I needed to survive the present. That evening, I gathered my inner circle, Lucius, Josh, Mark, Gary, and Kalen, in the war room. The map of Baymar hung on the wall, marked with defensive positions, patrol routes, and resource locations. Eli's timeline is 6 months, I said without preamble. That means we have roughly 180 days to prepare for an invasion. Let's talk strategy. Lucius stepped forward. First priority, fortifications. The walls are strong, but they need reinforcement. Thicker gates, better parapets, murder holes above the entrance. Agreed. Mark, you'll oversee wall improvements. Use the limestone from the caves, mix it with sand and gravel to make a crude concrete. It won't be perfect, but it'll be stronger than mortar alone. Mark nodded. I'll need laborers. 50 men, minimum. You'll have them. Gary, what's our current troop strength? Gary consulted a ledger. 327 knights, including pages and squires. After the tournament, morale is high and discipline is solid. But we're still outnumbered 6 to 1. 7 to 1, if Eli brings reinforcements, Kalen added quietly. His covert units number around 300. If he mobilizes them alongside regular troops, you're looking at 2,300 enemies. The room went silent. Then we can't win through numbers, I said. We win through tactics, terrain, and technology. Technology? Josh frowned. You mean the cannons? Among other things. Kalen, any word on the weapons master? I found him, Kalen said. His name is Hugo Verne. Former artillery commander for the Eastern campaigns, exiled 15 years ago for experimenting with explosive powders. He's living in a fishing village 30 kilometers west of here, barely scraping by. Bring him to Baymar. Offer him full wages, a workshop, and immunity from imperial law. Tell him he'll be building weapons for a king who doesn't care about the empire's rules. Kalen smiled faintly. He'll come. Men like Hugo live for the work. Give him tools and freedom, and he'll give you cannons. Good. When he arrives, set him up in the old estate near the limestone caves. Privacy, security, and access to raw materials. I turned to Lucius. We'll need a dedicated unit to guard the weapons project. 10 men, rotated weekly, sworn to secrecy. I'll handle it, Lucius said. I studied the map, tracing the approach routes to Baymar. Eli will come from the northeast, the only road wide enough for a large force. We need to control that approach. Watchtowers every 5 kilometers, signal fires for communication, and obstacles to slow their advance. Obstacles? Mark asked. Ditches, stakes, caltrops, anything that forces them to bunch up and slow down. When they reach the gates, they'll be tired, frustrated, and vulnerable. And when they reach the gates? Gary asked. I smiled grimly. They'll meet the cannons. The next 3 weeks blurred into a frenzy of preparation. Mark's team reinforced the walls, mixing limestone concrete and pouring it into gaps and weak points. The gates received iron bracing and reinforced hinges. Murder holes were carved above the entrance, narrow slots through which defenders could drop stones, boiling water, or arrows onto attackers below. Gary drilled the knights relentlessly. Morning combat training, afternoon tactical exercises, evening endurance runs. They learned to fight in formation, to hold defensive positions, to retreat and regroup without breaking. Josh's external monitoring unit logged every visitor to Baymar. Merchants, travelers, messengers, all were catalogued, their movements tracked, their business scrutinized. 3 suspicious individuals were identified and quietly turned away at the gates. Lucius's shadow unit, Barry, Terry, Dennison, Finn, and Marcus, moved through the city like ghosts. They listened in taverns, watched from rooftops, and reported anything unusual. So far, nothing. But the network was in place, ready to catch the next spy who tried to infiltrate. And Kalen? Kalen continued his double game with chilling precision. Twice a week, he sent reports to Eli, each one carefully crafted to portray Baymar as weak, disorganized, and ripe for conquest. Eli's responses grew more confident, more dismissive. Maintain observation. I'll deal with the pretender when the time is right. Reading those messages sent cold satisfaction through me. Let him underestimate us. Let him think we're helpless. The surprise would be all the sweeter. On the 21st day, Hugo Verne arrived. I met him in the courtyard at dusk, flanked by Trey and Kalen. Hugo was a wiry man in his 60s, with gray hair tied back and hands scarred from decades of metalwork. His eyes were sharp, intelligent, and deeply suspicious. "You're the king?" he asked, looking me up and down. "I am. You're a child. I'm 15. And I need cannons." That got his attention. His eyes narrowed. "Cannons are forbidden. The Empire executed the last man who tried to build them. The Empire exiled me to die. I don't care what they forbid." Hugo studied me for a long moment. Then, slowly, he smiled. "I like you, boy. What do you know about gunpowder?" "Enough to know the basics: saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal, mixed in the right proportions. But I need someone who knows the details: grinding techniques, moisture control, ignition timing." Hugo's smile widened. "You've done your homework. Most nobles think cannons are magic. They don't understand that it's chemistry and engineering. I'm not most nobles." "No," Hugo said thoughtfully. "No, you're not." He looked around the courtyard, at the knights training, at the reinforced walls, at the waterwheel mill turning in the distance. "You're building something here. Something real. I'm building a future. One where Baymar doesn't need the Empire's permission to survive." Hugo nodded slowly. "All right. I'll build your cannons. But I'll need a workshop, materials, and assistants who can follow instructions without asking stupid questions. You'll have all 3. Kalen will show you to your workshop. Anything you need, tell me. Anything you build stays secret until I say otherwise." "Understood." Hugo extended a scarred hand. "Let's see if we can make history, boy king." I shook his hand firmly. "We already are." That night, I stood on the walls again, watching the city sleep. Lanterns flickered in windows. Smoke curled from chimneys. The mills will turn steadily, grinding grain through the darkness. Below, in a hidden workshop, Hugo Verne was already sketching cannon designs. In the farmlands, crops grew toward harvest. In the mines, copper and quartz waited to be shaped into tools of progress. And in the capital, my brother plotted my death, unaware that every day he waited, we grew stronger. I opened the system interface. Host, Ethan Cho, age, 15, status, Lord of Baymar, level, beginner, 1 current points, development points, DP, 100 technology points, TP, 0 experience points, XP, 10 bonus points, BP, 0. Active missions. Build and test warfare cannons, in progress, advanced to level 2, 2000 XP, 10,000 TP required, recent achievements. Waterwheel mill completed, plus 25 TP, spent on workshop enhancement, first invention bonus, plus 10 XP. I frowned at the numbers. 10,000 technology points to reach level 2. That was a massive gap. The mill had earned me 25 points. Even if cannons earned 50, I'd still be nowhere close. System, give me options for earning technology points faster. Technology point acceleration options. Mass production, build multiple units of existing inventions. Earn reduced TP per unit, but volume compensates. Optimization, improve existing designs. Earn partial TP for significant enhancements. New inventions, develop entirely new technologies. Highest TP rewards, but requires time and resources. Education system, teaching others to innovate generates passive TP over time. I studied the list thoughtfully. Mass production made sense. I could build more watermills, more improved carts, more printing presses. Small points per unit, but they'd add up. Optimization was already happening, Tim's precision tools, the wall reinforcements, the farming techniques. I just needed to formalize them as system-recognized improvements. New inventions would come with Hugo's cannons and whatever else we developed. But education. That was interesting. System, explain the education system option. Education system, passive TP generation. Teaching others to innovate creates a multiplier effect. Students who develop new techniques or improvements generate TP for the host. Effect scales with number of students and quality of education. Requires formal education infrastructure, schools, teachers, curriculum. Estimated TP generation, 5 to 10 TP per month, scales with program size. 5 to 10 points a month wasn't much. But over years, it would compound. And more importantly, it would create a culture of innovation, people solving problems, improving systems, building on each other's ideas. That was how civilizations advanced. System, add establish formal education system as a submission. New submission added, establish formal education system. Open schools in Baymar. Train teachers. Develop curriculum. Enroll students. Reward, passive TP generation plus knowledge dissemination bonus. I closed the interface and looked out over Baymar one last time. 6 months until Eli arrived. 6 months to turn a struggling city into a fortress. 6 months to build weapons this world had never seen. 6 months to create an education system that would outlast any war. It seemed impossible. But so did reviving dead soil. So did building a mill that ground grain by water. So did training 300 rejected knights into a disciplined army. I'd done all of that in 3 months. Imagine what I could do in 6. The next morning, I visited the school construction site. The building was nearly complete, 3 large rooms, each with space for 30 students, plus a smaller office for administrative work. Grace and Hannah were inside, arranging the chalkboards Tim had delivered. Ara helped them, her movements still careful but steadier than they'd been weeks ago. Brother Ethan. Momo called from the corner, where he was stacking slates into neat piles. Look. I can count to 100 now. I grinned. Show me. He rattled off numbers with perfect accuracy, barely pausing for breath. When he finished, he beamed with pride. Excellent work, Momo. Soon you'll be teaching others. His eyes widened. Really? Really? The best way to learn is to teach. Grace approached, wiping dust from her hands. The school will open in 5 days. We have 20 children enrolled, and 10 adults signed up for evening classes. That's a good start, I said. But I want to expand. Advertise in the villages to the south. Offer free education for the first year. Let parents know that learning to read and calculate will help their children find better work. Hannah nodded enthusiastically. We could send messengers with flyers. Tim's printing press will be ready soon, right? In 2 weeks, hopefully. Once it's operational, we'll print notices, textbooks, instruction manuals, anything that helps spread knowledge. Grace looked at me with that expression mothers have, pride mixed with worry. You're planning for a long future, Ethan. But what if? What if Eli comes? I finished gently. He will. But education doesn't stop being important just because there's a war. If anything, it's more important. Knowledge is the one thing an enemy can't take from us. She nodded slowly, understanding. We spent the rest of the morning organizing the classroom spaces. Grace would teach basic arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Hannah would handle language, reading, writing, and basic grammar. I'd take advanced mathematics for older students who showed aptitude. It wasn't a university. But it was a start. And in a world where most people couldn't write their own names, even a start was revolutionary. That afternoon, I received a visitor. Nathan found me in the workshop, where I was helping Tim test the printing press prototype. The frame was complete, the press mechanism functional, but we were still working on the letter blocks. My lord, Nathan said, bowing slightly. There's a woman at the gates requesting an audience. She says she's a healer. I set down the letter block I'd been examining. A healer? From where? She didn't say. But she's carrying herbs and medical supplies. The gate guards thought you'd want to know. Healers were valuable. Baymar had basic medical care, Grace knew some herb lore, and a few older women could set bones and stitch wounds, but we had no one with formal training. Bring her to the castle. I'll meet her in the main hall. 15 minutes later, I stood face to face with a woman who looked like she'd walked through hell to get here. She was perhaps 30 years old, with dark hair streaked with gray and tired eyes that held both intelligence and pain. Her clothes were worn but clean, and the bag slung over her shoulder clinked with glass vials and metal instruments. Your Majesty, she said, bowing low. My name is Alara Mas. I'm a trained physician from the capital. I've come seeking sanctuary. Mas. The same surname as Kalen. Coincidence? Or something more? Sanctuary from what? I asked carefully. From people who want me dead. She met my eyes steadily. I was a royal physician, serving Prince Eli Huan. 3 weeks ago, I discovered that someone in his household was using Nalat wisp, a poison with no known cure. I reported it to the authorities, thinking I was doing my duty. My blood went cold. What happened? Eli's men tried to kill me. Her voice was flat, emotionless. They burned my clinic, destroyed my records, and put a price on my head. I barely escaped. Why come here? Because you're the only lord in the empire who has no reason to be loyal to Eli. And because. She hesitated. Because I heard rumors that you were poisoned with Nalat wisp. If that's true, and you survived, I need to know how. I studied her for a long moment. The system chimed softly. Lie detection analysis, statement probability 87% true. Not perfect certainty, but high enough. You're Kalen's sister, I said quietly. Her eyes widened. How? He's here. In Baymar. He serves in my army. For the first time, emotion cracked through her controlled facade. He's alive? Very much so. And he'll be pleased to see you. Tears streamed down her face before she could stop them. I thought. When he disappeared, I thought Eli had killed him. Eli tried to kill both of us. He failed. I gestured to a chair. Sit. Tell me everything you know about Nalat wisp. And then we'll discuss how you can help Baymar. Alara's knowledge was encyclopedic. She explained how Nalat wisp worked, a slow poison that degraded cellular function, mimicking natural illness. How it was administered, usually through food or drink, requiring multiple doses over weeks. How it killed, organ failure, starting with the liver and spreading to the heart. There is no cure, she said firmly. Once the poison takes hold, death is inevitable. The best you can do is manage symptoms and extend life by a few weeks. Then how am I alive? I asked. She frowned. I don't know. If you were poisoned 3 months ago, you should be dead. Or at least bedridden, unable to function. I couldn't tell her about the system's cure. That secret stayed locked. Maybe I was lucky. Or maybe the dose was smaller than intended. Alara didn't look convinced, but she didn't press. Regardless, you're the only person I've ever heard of who survived. That makes you either blessed by the gods or incredibly fortunate. Or stubborn, I said with a slight smile. That earned a small laugh. Stubbornness helps. We talked for another hour. Alara described her training, years studying at the capital's medical academy, learning anatomy, surgery, herbalism, and disease treatment. She'd served as a royal physician for 5 years before discovering the poison plot. I can't go back, she said quietly. Eli will never stop hunting me. But I can help you. I can train others, establish a medical clinic, improve sanitation and hygiene. If you're building a city, you'll need doctors. You're right. And you're hired. I stood. Nathan will show you to a room in the castle. Tomorrow, we'll discuss setting up a clinic. For tonight, rest. You're safe here. She bowed deeply. Thank you, Your Majesty. I won't let you down. After she left, I sat alone in the hall, processing everything. Alara Mas. Kalen Mas. Both refugees from Eli's network. Both bringing valuable skills and dangerous knowledge. It was almost too convenient. But the system's lie detection had confirmed her story. And if she was telling the truth, she represented a massive asset, medical expertise that could save lives during the coming war. I made a mental note to have Lucius's shadow unit watch her carefully. Trust, but verify. Always verify. That night, I arranged for Kalen and Alara to meet in private. I wasn't present, some reunions deserved privacy, but Nathan reported that both siblings had wept openly, holding each other like they'd been torn apart for years instead of months. Family, I thought. It makes us vulnerable, but also strong. I thought of Grace, sleeping soundly in her chambers. Of Hana and Ara, laughing together in the kitchens. Of Momo, who'd adopted me as his hero. I'd built a family here. Not through blood, but through choice. And I'd defend them with everything I had. The next morning, I met with Alara and Kalen together. They sat side by side, their resemblance now obvious, same sharp eyes, same careful posture, same quiet intensity. Alara, I said. Your brother has been instrumental in helping Baymar. He's provided intelligence on Eli's operations and maintained his cover as a double agent. Can I trust you to do the same? She nodded without hesitation. You can. Eli tried to kill me. Whatever loyalty I once had died the night my clinic burned. Good. Because I need you to do more than just practice medicine. I need you to train others. Build a medical corps, people who can treat wounds, prevent disease, and keep our soldiers alive during the coming war. How many soldiers? 300 knights now. More if we can recruit them. Plus a civilian population of over 1,500. Alara's eyes widened. That's ambitious. Everything we're doing is ambitious. The question is whether you're up for it. She straightened, some of the weariness leaving her expression. I am. Give me space, supplies, and students, and I'll build you the best medical corps this empire has ever seen. You'll have all three. Kalen spoke for the first time. My king, if my sister is staying, I request permission to tell her everything. She deserves to know what we're facing. I considered it briefly, then nodded. Agreed. But the same rules apply, nothing leaves this room without my permission. Over the next hour, Kalen briefed Alara on everything. Eli's plan to invade Baymar. The network of spies and covert operatives. The hidden training grounds in the northern mountains. Hugo Verne's cannon project. Alara listened intently, asking sharp questions and absorbing every detail. When Kalen finished, she turned to me. You're not just defending Baymar. You're preparing for a larger war. Correct. Eli is the immediate threat, but he's not the only one. Connor, James, Jin Na, all of my half-siblings see me as a pawn or a problem. If I want to survive long-term, I need to become strong enough that attacking me isn't worth the cost. Deterrence through strength, Alara said thoughtfully. It's a sound strategy. But it requires time, and you have 6 months. Which is why every day counts. Every innovation, every trained soldier, every educated citizen, they all add up. She smiled faintly. You remind me of the old scholars at the academy. They used to say that civilization advances one small step at a time, not through grand gestures. They were right. Grand gestures get you killed. Small, consistent progress keeps you alive. The days blurred into weeks. Hugo Verne's workshop became a hive of activity. He taught 3 young smiths, Dane, Colin, and Ward, the fundamentals of metallurgy and gunpowder chemistry. Together, they ground saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal into fine powders, mixing them in precise ratios and testing small batches in controlled burns. The first test explosion nearly took Hugo's eyebrows off. The second was more controlled. By the 10th, they had a stable powder that burned hot and fast without detonating prematurely. We're ready for cannon trials, Hugo announced 3 weeks after his arrival. But I'll need iron. A lot of it. I assigned a dedicated team to the iron mine, 20 men working double shifts, hauling ore to Hale Verno's forge. Hale and his apprentices worked around the clock, smelting iron and casting it into thick-walled tubes that Hugo could bore and reinforce. It was slow, dangerous work. One casting cracked during cooling, nearly injuring 2 workers. Another tube failed the pressure test, splitting along a hidden seam. But by the 6th week, we had our first prototype cannon. It was crude, a short iron tube mounted on a wooden frame, with a touch hole for ignition, but it was functional. Hugo loaded it with powder and a solid iron ball, aimed it at a distant target, and lit the fuse. The explosion was deafening. The ball screamed downrange and smashed through 3 wooden planks set up 50 meters away. The workers cheered. Hugo grinned like a child. I felt a surge of satisfaction. How many can you build? I asked. At current production rates? 1 every 2 weeks. If I had more smiths and better tools, maybe 1 a week. You'll have both. I'll assign 5 more smiths to your team and requisition whatever equipment you need. Then we'll arm your walls by the time Eli arrives, Hugo said confidently. I looked at the shattered target planks, imagining what a dozen cannons could do to an advancing army. Good. Because when he comes, I want him to understand exactly what he's facing. As the 2nd month since the mill's completion came to a close, I took stock of our progress. Military. 327 trained knights, improved discipline, formation tactics, endurance 1 functional cannon, 6 more in production wall reinforcements 40% complete. Watchtowers and signal fires operational. Economy. Waterwheel mill processing 500 kilograms grain/day. Farmlands producing 30% surplus. Copper mine yielding 200 kilograms/month. Trade revenue up 50%. Technology. Printing press prototype 80% complete. Improved cart axles in use, breakdown rate reduced 75% precision tools distributed to craftsmen. Quartz deposit identified, applications pending education. School opening in 3 days. 30 students enrolled, 20 children, 10 adults, 3 teachers trained, Grace, Hana, Ara assisting curriculum developed for basic literacy and mathematics. Intelligence. Shadow unit operational, 5 agents monitoring City Kalen Moss, double agent, feeding false intel to Eli. Alara Moss, physician, establishing medical corps. No additional spies detected. It was progress. Real, measurable progress. But 4 months remained until Eli's invasion. 4 months to finish the cannons, complete the fortifications, train more soldiers, and expand our resource base. 4 months to turn Baymar from a struggling city into a fortress. I opened the system interface one last time before bed. Mission progress, build and test warfare cannons, 15% complete, advance to level 2, 10 XP, 2000 XP, 25 TP, 10,000 TP. The numbers mocked me. I'd earned only 10 experience points and spent all my technology points on the workshop upgrade. Level 2 seemed impossibly far away. But I'd started with nothing. A dying body, a barren land, and 300 rejected knights. Now I had a mill, a school, a cannon, and an army that actually believed in something. Progress wasn't always measured in numbers. Sometimes, it was measured in the hope you saw in people's eyes. And for the first time since arriving in this world, I saw hope everywhere I looked. 4 months, I whispered to the darkness. Let's see what we can build. The system chimed softly, almost approvingly. And outside my window, Baymar slept, unaware that its future was being forged one innovation at a time. Episode 14. Winter's grip tightened over Baymar like a clenched fist. Snow fell in thick curtains, blanketing the city in white silence. The waterwheel mill groaned under the weight of ice accumulating on its paddles, requiring workers to chip it away every few hours to keep the mechanism turning. But inside the walls, life continued with determined purpose. I stood in the newly opened schoolhouse, watching Grace teach 20 children the fundamentals of addition. Her voice was patient and warm, guiding small hands as they scratched numbers on slate tablets with chalk. If you have 3 apples and I give you 2 more, how many do you have? A forest of hands shot up. Grace called on a girl of perhaps 7, her face scrunched in concentration. 5, Miss Grace. Excellent. And if you eat 1? 4. Several children shouted in unison. Grace smiled, and I felt warmth spread through my chest. This was what progress looked like, not cannons or mills, but children learning to think, to calculate, to understand the world through numbers. In the next room, Hana worked with older students on reading comprehension. She'd written a simple story on the chalkboard, something about a farmer and his clever dog, and the students took turns reading aloud. Some stumbled over words. Others read smoothly, their confidence growing with each sentence. Hana corrected gently, encouraging without criticism. Ara assisted both classes, moving between rooms with a grace that belied her former frailty. 2 months of good food, warm shelter, and purpose had transformed her from a fragile invalid into a capable young woman. I watched from the doorway for another minute, then left quietly. They didn't need me hovering. Outside, the cold bit through my cloak. I pulled it tighter and made my way toward the workshop district, where Tim Myers had promised a demonstration of the completed printing press. The workshop was warm, heated by 2 roaring forges. Tim stood at the center of the room, surrounded by wooden letter blocks arranged in neat rows. Each block held a single raised character, letters, numbers, punctuation marks. My lord. Tim's face lit up when he saw me. Perfect timing. We're ready for the first test. I approached the press, examining the mechanism. It was beautifully crafted, a solid wooden frame supporting a horizontal bed where paper would rest, and a vertical press plate that would transfer ink from the letter blocks to the page. Show me, I said. Tim selected letter blocks, arranging them into words with quick, practiced movements. Within minutes, he'd composed a simple message. Baymar rises. He rolled a thin layer of ink across the raised letters, then carefully placed a sheet of paper on top. The press plate descended with a satisfying thunk, applying even pressure across the surface. When Tim lifted the press and peeled away the paper, crisp black letters stared back at us. Baymar rises. Perfect. Clear. Identical on every sheet. By the gods, whispered Aldrich, the old scribe who'd been helping carve letter blocks. In 30 years as a copyist, I've never seen anything like this. Tim grinned. How long would it take you to hand copy 100 pages? Aldrich calculated silently. 2 weeks, working from dawn to dusk. With this press? 2 days. Maybe 3. The old scribe's hands trembled. This will change everything. Books, documents, contracts, knowledge that once belonged only to the wealthy and powerful. Will belong to everyone, I finished. Exactly. I turned to Tim. How fast can you produce letter blocks? Aldrich and I can carve 20 a day between us. We have the basic alphabet, numbers, and common punctuation already. Give us another week and we'll have everything we need for full-scale production. Do it. And start training apprentices. I want 3 more people who can operate this press within a month. Yes, my lord. I examined the printed page again, running my finger across the letters. They were slightly uneven, the pressure hadn't been perfectly uniform, but that would improve with practice. System, I thought silently. Evaluate the printing press. Printing press, manual, complete technology points awarded, 35 TP efficiency rating, 78%, room for optimization, applications, document reproduction, education materials, administrative records, propaganda. Bonus achievement, educational infrastructure synergy reward, plus 15 TP, press plus school system working together total TP earned, 50 TP current TP balance, 50 TP. 50 points. Combined with the mill's 25, I'd earned 75 total, but I'd spent 50 on the workshop upgrade, leaving me back at 50. Still, it was progress. Tim, I need you to print something for me. Of course, my lord. What do you need? I pulled out a parchment I'd prepared earlier. This. 500 copies. Tim read it and his eyebrows rose. Notice to all citizens of Baymar. His Majesty King Ethan Cho invites all residents to attend a public assembly in the Central Square 10 days hence. Topics of discussion will include city development, economic opportunities, and future plans for Baymar's growth. All are welcome. All voices will be heard. By order of the King. You're holding a public assembly? Tim asked carefully. I am. The people deserve to know what we're building. And they deserve a chance to contribute. Tim nodded slowly. It's unusual. Most lords make decrees, not requests. I'm not most lords. And Baymar isn't most cities. I met his eyes. We're building something new here, Tim. Something where people have a voice in their own future. That requires communication, transparency, and trust. And 500 notices will ensure everyone knows, Tim said, understanding dawning. Smart. Print them. Distribute them throughout the city, markets, taverns, workshops, residential areas. Make sure everyone sees one. It'll be done within 3 days, my lord. I left the workshop and headed toward Hugo's facility near the western estate. The path was treacherous with ice, but I'd walked it enough times now that my feet found purchase instinctively. Guards stood at the facility entrance, part of the rotating security detail Lucius had established. They saluted as I passed. Inside, heat from the forge made the air shimmer. Hugo stood over a long iron tube, examining it with critical eyes while 3 smiths waited nervously for his judgment. Morning, Hugo, I called. He looked up, grinning. My king. You're just in time. We're about to test number 7. 7 cannons in 6 weeks. We'd accelerated production significantly, though Hugo insisted that each one still required meticulous attention to detail. Any improvements over the last model? Thicker walls near the breech, better reinforcement around the touch hole, and I adjusted the bore slightly for a tighter fit with the projectiles. Should increase range and accuracy. We hauled the cannon outside to the testing range, a wide stretch of empty land far from any buildings. The target was a stone wall section we'd built specifically for this purpose, marked at 50, 100, and 150 meters. Hugo's team loaded the cannon with practiced efficiency, powder down the barrel, wadding to hold it in place, iron ball, more wadding to secure it. They aimed at the 100-meter mark and cleared the area. Hugo lit the fuse. The explosion rolled across the snow-covered field like thunder. The iron ball screamed downrange and smashed into the stone wall with devastating force, pulverizing the center section and sending fragments spinning away. When the smoke cleared, a hole the size of my torso gaped in the wall. Hugo laughed, delighted. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. I studied the impact point. What's the effective range? Against stone walls? 150 meters, maybe 200 with favorable conditions. Against troops in the open? 300 meters, easy. The balls will skip and tumble, cutting down multiple targets per shot. I imagined a dozen cannons firing in sequence, their projectiles tearing through massed infantry. It was a brutal vision, but necessary. How many can we have ready in 4 months? Hugo calculated silently. At current rates? 18, maybe 20. If you give me 2 more forges and another 5 smiths, I could push it to 30. You'll have them. I'm pulling workers from the copper mine, they can rotate between mining and smithing. That'll help. Hugo wiped soot from his face. My king, These cannons will give you a massive advantage. But they're not invincible. If Eli brings siege equipment or manages to breach the walls. He won't breach the walls. Not if we use the cannons properly. I turned to face him fully. I need you to train artillery crews, people who can load, aim, and fire under pressure. 3 to 4 people per cannon, rotating shifts so fatigue doesn't cause mistakes. I can do that. Give me 40 men in 3 weeks. You'll have both. We watched the Smiths examine the cannon, checking for cracks or stress fractures. Finding none, they gave Hugo a thumbs up. Number 7 is approved, Hugo announced. On to number 8. That evening, I convened my inner circle in the war room. The map of Baymar had grown more detailed over the past weeks, defensive positions marked in red, resource locations in blue, approach routes in yellow. Lucius, Josh, Mark, Gary, Kalen, Alara, and now Hugo all gathered around the table. My core advisors, each bringing unique expertise. Status updates, I said. Lucius, military first. Lucius stepped forward, his expression serious. Troop strength remains at 327. Training has intensified, we're now drilling twice daily, focusing on defensive formations and rapid deployment. The men are fit, disciplined, and ready. Casualties during training? Minor injuries only. Sprains, bruises, 1 broken finger. Nothing serious. Alara's medical protocols have significantly reduced incidents. I nodded to Alara. Good work. She dipped her head slightly. I've trained 15 assistants in basic first aid and injury treatment. They're distributed among the units, ready to respond immediately to any medical needs. Excellent. Mark, fortifications? Mark unrolled a detailed diagram of the walls. Reinforcements are 60% complete. The main gates are fully braced, murder holes operational, and we've added oil reservoirs above the entrance that can be heated and poured on attackers. Boiling oil, Gary muttered. Medieval, but effective. Very effective, Mark agreed. We've also dug ditches on the approach road, 3 meters wide, 2 meters deep, filled with sharpened stakes. Any cavalry charge will slow to a crawl navigating them. And the signal system? 5 watchtowers operational, each with beacon fires ready to light. If scouts spot Eli's army, we'll have at least 6 hours warning before they reach the gates. I traced the approach road on the map. That's enough time to deploy the cannons and position the troops. Good. Josh, external intelligence? Josh consulted his notes. We've logged 317 visitors in the past month, merchants, travelers, and migrant workers. All have been catalogued, their movements tracked. Nothing suspicious so far. And the Shadow Unit? Barry's team continues monitoring internal activity. They've identified 2 potential informants, a merchant who asks too many questions about military strength, and a tavern worker who seems unusually interested in the castle's layout. Have they acted on this interest? Not yet. They're observing, listening. We're doing the same. Keep watching. If they make contact with anyone outside Baymar, detain them quietly. Understood. I turned to Kalen. Eli? Still confident, Kalen said with a thin smile. My latest report described collapsing infrastructure and widespread hunger. He's convinced you're barely holding on. How much longer can we maintain the deception? 3 months, maybe 4. Eventually, he'll send someone to verify my reports. When that happens, the ruse ends. Then we have 3 months to finish preparations. Hugo, cannons? Hugo straightened. 7 complete, 8 in progress. 18 confirmed by invasion date, possibly 20 if production stays on schedule. I've begun training artillery crews, 40 men learning to load, aim, and fire under pressure. Ammunition? Iron balls stockpiled, 200 rounds and counting. We're also experimenting with grape shot, clusters of smaller projectiles that spread on impact. Devastating against massed infantry. I felt a grim satisfaction. Grape shot would turn each cannon into a giant shotgun, capable of cutting down dozens of men with a single blast. Prioritize grape shot production. If Eli brings 2,000 men, we need every advantage. Agreed. I looked at each of them in turn. 4 months. That's all we have. 4 months to finish the cannons, complete the walls, train the soldiers, and stockpile supplies. No wasted time, no wasted resources. Every day counts. They answered in unison. Yes, my king. Dismissed. Get some rest, tomorrow we start the final push. As they filed out, Lucius lingered. Something on your mind? I asked. The public assembly, he said quietly. It's risky, Ethan. Gathering the entire population in one place. If there are spies, if someone tries something. I know. But it's necessary. The people need to understand what's coming and why. They need to feel invested in Baymar's survival. And if they panic? They won't. Not if we're honest with them. I met his eyes. Fear comes from uncertainty. Give people information, give them a role to play, and fear turns into determination. Lucius nodded slowly. You're gambling that their loyalty outweighs their terror. I'm betting that people want to fight for something they believe in. And Baymar is worth believing in. He smiled faintly. When did you become a philosopher? When I realized that leading isn't just about strategy. It's about inspiration. The next 10 days passed in a blur of activity. Tim's printing press churned out 500 notices, which were distributed throughout Baymar. The response was immediate: curiosity, excitement, and some nervousness. Public assemblies were unheard of. Kings issued decrees, they didn't ask for input. But Ethan Cho wasn't most kings. The school continued operating, with enrollment climbing to 40 students as word spread about free education. Grace and Hannah taught with infectious enthusiasm, and even adults who'd never held a quill found themselves learning to write their names. Hugo's artillery crews trained relentlessly, learning to load and fire cannons in under 2 minutes. The first attempts were clumsy and dangerous, but by the 10th day, they moved with coordinated precision. Alara's medical corps expanded to 20 assistants, all trained in wound treatment, infection prevention, and emergency surgery. She established a clinic in the Central District, offering free care to anyone who needed it. The farmlands prepared for spring planting, with Leor coordinating 250 workers to clear new fields and prepare soil. The crop rotation plan I'd developed would maximize yield while maintaining soil health, a long-term strategy that would pay dividends for years. And through it all, I worked, training with the knights in the morning, overseeing projects in the afternoon, planning strategy in the evening. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't afford. On the 10th day, the central square filled with people. I stood on a raised platform constructed specifically for the assembly, looking out over a sea of faces. Over 1,000 citizens had gathered, men, women, children, elderly. Workers in patched clothes stood beside merchants in fine fabrics. Farmers rubbed shoulders with knights. The entire city, unified in curiosity. Lucius and my captains formed a protective ring around the platform, hands resting on sword hilts. Not threatening, but vigilant. I raised my hands, and the crowd quieted. People of Baymar, I began, projecting my voice to carry across the square. Thank you for coming. I know public assemblies are unusual. Most kings prefer to issue orders from behind castle walls. But I'm not most kings, and Baymar isn't most cities. A ripple of murmurs, but attentive. 3 months ago, this city was dying. The soil was barren, the people hungry, the future uncertain. The empire had abandoned us, left us to freeze in exile while they enjoyed their comforts in the capital. Heads nodded. They remembered. But we didn't accept that fate. We chose to fight. We revived the soil, built a mill, opened a school, and trained an army. We transformed Baymar from a graveyard into a living city. Scattered cheers now, growing louder. And we did it together. Farmers and soldiers, craftsmen and merchants, children and elders. Everyone contributed. Everyone mattered. The cheers swelled. But I didn't call you here to celebrate the past. I called you here to prepare for the future. I let the words hang. In 4 months, an army will march on Baymar. My half-brother, Prince Eli Huan, intends to conquer this city and use it for his own purposes. He believes we're weak, disorganized, and helpless. The crowd went silent, tension crackling like lightning. He's wrong. I pointed to the walls. Those fortifications will hold against any siege. We've reinforced them with concrete, added murder holes, and positioned artillery that can shatter stone at 200 meters. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Artillery was the stuff of legends, ancient weapons few had ever seen. We have 327 trained knights, each one worth 5 of Eli's men. We have a mill that feeds us, mines that supply us, and workshops that produce weapons this empire has never seen. I leaned forward, making eye contact with as many people as possible. But none of that matters without you. Soldiers defend walls, but citizens give them reason to fight. If Baymar falls, it's not just my kingdom that dies, it's your homes, your families, your futures. Silence. Total, absolute silence. So I'm asking for your help. We need workers to finish the fortifications. We need craftsmen to produce supplies. We need farmers to stockpile food. We need everyone, regardless of age or skill, to contribute to Baymar's defense. I paused, letting the request sink in. I won't lie to you. The coming months will be hard. We'll work long hours, endure cold weather, and face uncertainty. But if we stand together, if we fight for each other, we'll win. I raised my voice, letting it echo across the square. Baymar isn't just a city. It's a promise. A promise that hard work matters, that innovation matters, that people matter. And I swear to you, on my honor as your king, that I will defend that promise with everything I have. The crowd erupted. Not just cheers, roars. Fists pumping, voices shouting, people embracing their neighbors with fierce determination. I waited for the noise to subside, then continued. Over the next few days, my captains will organize volunteer groups. If you can work, sign up. If you can teach, help at the school. If you can heal, assist the medical corps. Every contribution counts. I pointed to the schoolhouse. Education continues. Every child deserves to learn, war or no war. I pointed to the mill. Production continues. We'll need food, supplies, and weapons. I pointed to the walls. Defense continues. We'll be ready when Eli arrives. The crowd roared again, louder this time. I raised my hands one final time. Baymar rises. Not because a king commands it, but because its people choose it. Together, we'll build a future worth fighting for. Together, we'll show the empire what exiles can achieve. The chant started somewhere in the back, a single voice that spread like wildfire. Baymar rises. Baymar rises. Baymar rises. Thousands of voices, united in defiance and hope. I stepped down from the platform, and the crowd parted. People reached out to touch my hand, my cloak, anything, not out of worship, but solidarity. Lucius appeared at my side, eyes shining. That, he said quietly, was masterful. That, I corrected, was necessary. Now let's see if words translate into action. They did. Within 2 days, 300 volunteers signed up for fortification work. Another 100 joined the supply production teams. 50 offered to help at the school. 20 volunteered for the medical corps. The city transformed into a hive of purposeful activity. Workers hauled stone and mixed concrete. Craftsmen produced arrows, shields, and armor. Farmers stockpiled grain and reinforced storage buildings. Children attended school in the morning and helped with lighter tasks in the afternoon, fetching water, carrying messages, organizing supplies. Even the elderly contributed, mending clothes, preparing meals for workers, and watching over the youngest children while parents labored. Baymar wasn't just preparing for war. It was becoming a community, united, determined, and resilient. I walked through the city every day, observing the progress. People greeted me not with bows, but waves. They called me my king, but it felt less like a title and more like a term of endearment. One afternoon, I found Momo at the school, teaching younger children their numbers. He'd become a teaching assistant, using what he'd learned from Grace to help others. Brother Ethan. He called, grinning. Look. I taught Mina to count to 50. A tiny girl with pigtails proudly recited numbers, stumbling only twice. Excellent work, both of you, I said, ruffling Momo's hair. Keep it up. Later, I visited Alara's clinic and found her treating a worker who'd cut his hand on a sharp edge. She cleaned the wound with practiced efficiency, applied a salve I recognized as honey-based, natural antibiotic, and wrapped it in clean cloth. You're turning into quite the physician, I observed. I had a good education, she said, smiling. And I finally have patients who trust me. The people here trust you because you've earned it. That's not something titles can buy. She looked at me thoughtfully. You're different from other nobles, you know. Most would never admit that trust has to be earned. Most nobles are fools. Trust is the foundation of leadership. Without it, you're just a man giving orders to people who'll abandon you at the first opportunity. As the weeks passed, I continued working on multiple fronts simultaneously. The printing press produced its first batch of educational materials, basic arithmetic workbooks that Grace used in class. Seeing children work through problems using printed pages instead of slates felt like magic. System notification, educational infrastructure achievement unlocked, passive TP generation activated, plus 3 TP/month. 3 points a month wasn't much, but it would compound over time. And more importantly, it meant the education system was self-sustaining, students learning, teachers teaching, knowledge spreading organically. Hugo completed cannons 8 through 12, and we began positioning them along the walls. Each one required a reinforced platform to handle the recoil, plus storage for ammunition and powder. The artillery crews trained daily, their movements becoming second nature. Load, aim, fire, reload. 2 minutes per cycle, like clockwork. I worked with Hugo to develop firing strategies, overlapping fields of fire, coordinated volleys, fallback positions if the walls were breached. We'll turn the approach road into a killing field, Hugo said with grim satisfaction. Any army that marches on Baymar will pay in blood for every meter. Mark completed the fortification work ahead of schedule. The walls now boasted reinforced concrete sections, boiling oil reservoirs, and concealed platforms where archers could rain down arrows from unexpected angles. It's not impenetrable, Mark admitted. But it'll cost them dearly to breach. Josh's intelligence network continued monitoring visitors and internal activity. The two suspected informants, the merchant and tavern worker, had made no suspicious moves, but the shadow unit kept watching. And Kalen? Kalen continued playing his role perfectly, sending weekly reports to Eli that painted Baymar as a city on the verge of collapse. Food shortages worsen. Morale is low. The king grows desperate. Eli's responses grew more confident, more dismissive. Continue monitoring. I'll deal with a pretender when winter ends. Reading those messages filled me with cold satisfaction. Let him be confident. Let him underestimate us. The surprise would be all the sweeter. One night, as I reviewed defense plans in my chambers, a knock interrupted my thoughts. Enter. Hana stepped inside, carrying a tray with tea and bread. You haven't eaten dinner yet. I glanced out the window and realized it was past midnight. I lost track of time. You always do. She set the tray down, her expression a mix of concern and affection. Brother Ethan, you can't keep working like this. You'll collapse. I'll rest when Eli is defeated. And if you collapse before then? She sat across from me, meeting my eyes. You're not invincible. You're human. And humans need sleep, food, and people who care about them. Something in her voice made me pause. Hana had always been supportive, always helpful. But tonight, there was something different, vulnerability, maybe. Or hope. Hana, I said gently. I appreciate your concern. Truly. But I can't afford to slow down. Too many people are depending on. I know. I know they're depending on you. We all are. She looked down at her hands. But I'm not just worried about the king. I'm worried about Ethan. The person. I studied her carefully. Hana had grown from a shy girl into a confident young woman over the past months. She taught classes, helped organize logistics, and somehow still found time to check on me daily. You've been taking care of me since I arrived, I said quietly. Why? She smiled, a little sadly. Because someone has to. And because you matter to me. Not just as a king, but as. She trailed off, blushing. Understanding dawned slowly. Hana's care wasn't just duty or gratitude. It was something deeper. I reached across the table and took her hand. Hana, you're important to me too. But I need you to understand something. Right now, I can't be anything more than a king preparing for war. There's no room for distractions, no matter how much I might want them. Her eyes glistened, but she nodded. I understand. I wanted you to know. That you're not alone. That people, that I, care about you. Beyond the crown. I know. And that means more than you realize. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, hands still clasped. Eat, she said finally, pulling away and gesturing to the food. Please. For me. I smiled. For you. As she left, I felt a strange mix of warmth and melancholy. Hana deserved better than a king too busy preparing for war to notice her. But this was the reality of leadership, sacrifices that cut deeper than steel. I ate the bread mechanically, barely tasting it, then returned to the defense plans. 4 months until Eli arrived. 4 months to finish everything. 4 months to turn Baymar into a fortress impregnable enough to withstand an army 6 times our size. The challenge seemed impossible. But then again, so had reviving barren soil. So had building a mill powered by water. So had training 300 rejected knights into a disciplined army. I'd done all of that in less than 4 months. Imagine what I could do with 4 more. I opened the system interface one last time before sleeping. Host, Ethan Cho, age, 15, status, Lord of Baymar, level, beginner, 1 current points, development points, DP, 100 technology points, TP, 53 experience points, XP, 10 bonus points, BP, 0. Active missions. Build and test warfare cannons, 60% complete. Advance to level 2, 10 XP, 2000 XP, 53 TP, 10,000 TP. Passive income. Education system, plus 3 TP/month. 53 technology points. The printing press and education synergy had pushed me past 50, with passive income now trickling in monthly. Still nowhere close to the 10,000 needed for level 2. But progress was progress. I closed the interface and extinguished the candle. Tomorrow, We'd continue building. And the day after that. And every day until Eli arrived. Because Baymar wasn't just surviving anymore. We were preparing to win.